All right, so we're going to dive right into the first segment, which is the purpose of the visual aid or interface. And once again, we have Dean with us again from Everett Games. Please, who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Okay, I'm Dean. I've been role-playing for 39 years, tabletop. My experience is a lot of different systems from sci-fi all the way to fantasy. We're talking first edition, basic, all the way up to things like Shadowrun, Earthdawn. How we always got to put Earthdawn in there.
Drink!
Yes. To a multitude of other systems. I've even done things like MERPs, Warhammer Fantasy, and such like. So a wealth of experience. I'm the creator of Untold Destiny, so we're going to have some good news coming up in a few months. So very excited about that. But otherwise, just a very rounded person who has played many different styles of games, from ones that use a lot of visual aids to ones that only use theatre of the mind.
All right. Well, awesome. So with all that experience, let me ask you, when you use maps or handouts or diagrams, tokens, whatever else you can think of, the little, coffee stained paper that you rub together to make it look old and you hand it to the players out there, what job do you believe these tools should perform in play? And how do you decide whether a visual element is clarifying a situation, shaping players' expectations? I don't like that part of the question. Or quietly directing choices and game master should control with care. Basically, are you driving them in a direction, or are you doing this as an element of the world, is what all that should have basically boiled down to.
So. Okay, I think visual aids are, they can be a useful tool, first of all, in providing clarity, especially maps. There's nothing more awkward than players not fully understanding or appreciating where they are, especially on a very complicated battlefield. So when I started using visual aids, this is back when I was running 2nd edition, we got Citadel models, painted them all up. It was all very exciting, and it was the first time we were moving from theatre of the mind, and we had this great clarity on the battle map. The problem is we were constantly looking at the battle map instead of thinking about what our characters were thematically doing. But when it came to where that fireball was landing, we didn't have any more arguments. So for me, clarity, when it comes to battle maps, that's the big advantage you have of something like that versus theatre of the mind. That's not to say that with the right players, theatre of the mind runs really smoothly and can be fully engaging. But if you're doing a one-shot, got some young players or people who haven't played before, a battle map's probably the best way to start, so everybody knows where they are. I also find visual aids great for scene setting. So you've already mentioned, and I got on my notes there, that tea-stained note to make it look really old and crumpled, a bit of sort of red ink splattered across to give it that kind of blood-stained look. You hand out the note to the player, and it's this mystery in this either handwritten yourself or using that lovely sort of cursive typeface and having it all typed up. Those sort of visual aids I find can add a lot more textual nature to the game. So you're handing your player something where they're not listening to your words to find the visual clues, but they're now looking at something tangible. And it's up to them to decipher, what are we looking at? How useful is it? Is it a clue to the next part of the quest? Is there some information we've missed? And it gives you, if you've designed this adventure, it gives you a great opportunity to hide bits of information within each of these clues that until you kind of get to the last clue, it doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden that last clue comes in, or they get a codex of how to break the code. And then they're going back through their notes, and it's that excitement around the table where they're bringing out all these visual aids, all these tangible pieces of handouts you've given them. And they're going through and trying to work out, hang on, is there a message we've missed? And then the big reveal happens, and there's cheers around the table. Fantastic. With theatre of the mind, you can sometimes miss that because you're relying on the players taking notes and then referencing their notes afterwards. And if you've got players who don't do very good note taking, they will miss stuff. You'll say something, it'll go unnoticed unless you're constantly bringing it up or reinforcing it back through narrative play, what you're doing, how you're describing. It'll get lost. And then the players will be there going, well, why did this happen? How did we end up in this situation? What did we miss? And they might feel a bit might feel they've been treated a bit unfairly because they haven't been taking good enough notes. So I find scene setting, visual aids, handouts, stuff like that, absolutely perfect for something like that. It's also great for when you have ambiguous stuff. Trying to describe a symbol. I've done this many a time, and describing a symbol can drive me mad because the players go, oh, well, hang on. So there's a flange, there's a curve, you just go, no, you draw it out and hand it to them. But where you have a symbol that's ambiguous, that has something hidden within, again, it's perfect to do something like that. So I think in answering the question, have I answered the question?
Sure.
I think so. I'm just checking my notes here because I got on a little bit of a ramble, but I think
you have given an answer.
I have. I mean, the reason I say it that way is I don't like to put words in people's mouths, and these questions are generally. This one is a little too verbose. I should have. Yeah. I was thinking about it weeks ago, and I never did change it. But the general idea was, and I think you did answer it, is what are they used for, and are they a benefit at the table, or do they get in the way at the table?
Yeah. The final part was around misleading or informing or what and how they work is dependent on where you are within your adventure and what the party are finding. So you have a map with an X on it, and immediately you're giving the players a choice. You can find out where that X is. You can do a bit of research. You can pull up your atlas and go, hang on, this is this part of the world, and the X is, oh, that location. You haven't told the players to do anything, but immediately they're now informed. There's potentially something there, treasure, something we don't know. Do we now spend time going there and investigating? And that's one handout. You just drop in. You don't say anything. You let the players sort of move the adventure in that direction. You can also do misleading stuff depending on the situation, the adventure you're running. So visual aids can be used in a multitude of ways to cover things on getting an adventure back on track, where clues have got muddled. So you kind of drop in a very blatant clue on potentially what's happening and where to go next, to optional stuff that you can just drop into your players and they can decide whether they investigate or not. So visual clues, a fantastic tool at the table. Not to replace theatre of the mind. I think it works best in conjunction with theatre of the mind.
Guys, you want to jump in on that? Or
yeah. So a couple of things. I guess I'm going to start with the one that I don't want to follow up on and just totally get a throwaway, which is I'm not so sure that the best. I don't think I would agree that the best way to start new players is with grid or like a combat grid or something like that. To me, the whole point of getting new players into the hobby is allowing them to enter into the mindscape, allowing them to enter into the fiction and whatnot. And I think that the more we pretty much have two modes of interacting with, the experience, the table and whatnot. There's visual and mind's eye. There's your real eye and your mind's eye. And it's pretty much one or the other. It's really hard for people to use both at the same time. So if I'm like on a one shot running a one shot and trying to get players in, I want to get them into that mind's eye as much as possible. And I want to avoid any sort of grid-based stuff as much as possible. But that's just actually my normal modus operandi for all my players, because again, to me, the whole goal is, escapism. It's narrative transportation, if you want to use a more psychological term. I want to actually get into this world, and I want my other players to actually enter this world and stay there. And I think the time when you use something like a battle map and grid and whatnot is when you have too many things to keep track of. Humans can keep track of about 3 to 6 things mentally. So 3 to 6 orcs, the cover, the broken down table is one thing. The 2 orcs is another thing. The door, the hallway, right? So if you don't have more than 6 things, then you can probably do it in the theater of the mind. That's fine. That's what I want to do. Even if I have to just push it a little bit and remind them about the area, like up to 10 things, that's fine. I'd still prefer theater of the mind. It's only when I have more things than that, which usually happens in a boss fight, that I give them a grid. And the whole point of the grid, of the visual interface, is that at some point, stakes and tension and trying to succeed on something matters. I don't want to say matters more than the narrative transportation of being in the world, but it matters just as much. And here, it's more like this. If you get the narrative transportation wrong and they don't feel fully immersed, that will hurt less than if you get the specifics of where you are wrong and then they cast the fireball in the wrong place and didn't accomplish what they wanted. That hurts more and it annoys the players more. So at some point, I have to value the players knowing exactly what they're doing in a high tense, high stressful situation like a big combat or a boss fight. I have to value that above pure narrative, immersion into the world. I'm just describing everything in the moment because that's what the player is going to value in that moment. When they're like, "Hey, we're killing this bad guy. I want to make sure that I know every 5 foot square." That's when I shift it. But generally, for the most part, I'm trying to get them to feel like they're a person in the world, and that dovetails right into other uses of handouts and whatnot. My first campaign, and I didn't do it as much in the second and I guess third. I forget how many I'm on, but in the first 1 or 2 campaigns, there were so many visuals. I made so many handouts. I had paper with a texture printed on it, but I also had actual 3-dimensional old. It feels like parchment paper and whatnot. I would handwrite letters from people and whatnot. I would get the wax seals and actually stamp everything. I would make everything as tactile and physical and 3-dimensional as possible to really I would just cover the table with everything that was in the world. I made a poster that they found on an inn with a bunch of daggers thrown in it because the people didn't like the king that had written this poster, "Stop your perfidy and your evil doing." And I made a whole bunch of physical handouts to really anchor them to the world. So on the one hand, I'm like, no, I don't like a grid. I try to avoid a grid as much as possible. And on the other hand, it's I try to give them as many physical things that exist in the world as possible, as just, it's essentially creating a ritual space. You have all these things on the table and now you're in this place and now you're in this world because of all this stuff here. If you don't have that, like my current game, we don't really have any physical handouts or anything. It's just pretty much the blank table and everyone's food and drinks and whatnot. And it doesn't have the same atmosphere. You don't really feel like you're there in the same way because you don't have anything tactile to anchor you. Where humans, yeah, we like our mind's eye, but it also really helps to have something tactile. So that's my position on it. I try to avoid the grid as much as possible, but I absolutely know when it's necessary. And it's necessary when it would be more disruptive to play not to have it than to have it.
Yeah, it comes down to, especially when I mentioned you've got new players or first-time players or people who are just coming to have a quick play, a one-shot. Often the grid is a far simpler, quicker way of getting them involved in the game and getting them moving through the game. So when I ran taster sessions at Crusade, it was 5e. This is a convention we used to have down in Wales, which sadly isn't being done anymore. But we had a role-play club. A bunch of young kids came in, and I had this big map. The idea was you got 45 minutes. As runes have opened, you got 45 minutes. That was the length of the one-shot to try and get into the vault and to acquire this wand and get out. And that's it. So they had the whole map ahead of them, their little models, and they would just go from room to room, quickly trying to either defeat creatures or find things or find the keys to unlock the vault. And that worked incredibly well. During GWAC, I had one-shots and I had simple maps. So I've got a classic map set. So it's the maps of old, that real sort of classic TSR kind of map feel. And I used that just so that people understood the layout of the rooms. And then everything else was theatre of the mind. It wasn't models or anything like that. And I found that works great because your player, to immerse your player in the world, if you're showing them what they can see, in other words, the layout of the room, the dimensions and roughly, what's in the room, but not cluttered. So the classic maps are showing the major details, but nothing else. So there's not a lot of graphics in there. The player can then fill in with their imagination, the gaps. But they've got something to begin with. So each player is starting with the same sort of layout. And then as you describe it, they're filling in the details themselves. And then they're reacting to it. So they're saying, oh, can I do this or can I do that? And you get that lovely hybrid between having a battle map for positioning and awareness, to theatre of the mind, the freedom it creates on, yeah, I would like to do this. I'm not looking at a map to see whether I could do it. I'm thinking, I've got this in the room, I got that in the room, I'd like to do X, Y, Z, and can I do it? And then you can quickly adjudicate and have those actions done. So I think your approach is fantastic. I think it's great. But when it comes to new players or a short one shot, I find maps tend to work better.
I'm of two minds on this. My background is D&D 3.5, so very tactical movement, very grid based. Dungeon crawling, inch by inch. So while maps would help with the visual anchoring of where your characters are, what's around them, as well as what they can interact with, they kind of make a shared mental model for everyone at the table, and everyone's on the same playing field because of the map. Now, I've moved on from 3.5 to index card RPG and other more free-form games, more, I guess, streamlined games. And instead of using battle maps, I use visual cards, basically. And again, this does the same thing. As Archmaster said, it anchors the player's imaginations to a scene, to kind of build that shared mental model. It also helps speed up understanding of what's in the space around you. It reduces cognitive load. The more you can reduce cognitive load, the faster things move. So that to me is what visual aids of any kind, whether physical, whether they're handouts, or if you're playing on a VTT, they help speed things along without having to have big long explanations, like having box text that takes up 5 pages to just perfectly describe what the scene is. I'm not Tolkien. I'm not going to be able to expound upon a blade of grass in 5 paragraphs. That's not me. I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a visual cue of what's around you, and then I'm going to lay out things that you can interact with. And those I will draw attention to with words, more than likely. If I don't draw attention to it, feel free to fill it in. If you're in a cave, you can probably guess there's stalactites and stalagmites based on it being a cave. You can interact with those. I don't mind you adding them to my scene.
Good old co-creation.
Yep, I'm okay with that. But with the reduction of cognitive load, it makes player turns happen faster, and it gets everybody into the action sooner. And that's what a lot of players are here for. They're here to roll dice. They're here to take big actions, be the big damn heroes is what they're trying to be. That's what we all want to be, is big damn heroes. So, taking that, cognitive load of, did he say that cliff was 20 feet tall or 40 feet tall? No, it's, it lay it out for them. It's in visual format. They don't have to guess.
It's 20 for you and 40 for him. Now move on.
Yeah, because you're a human. He's a dwarf. Okay.
Or just co-create the cliff. It's whatever you want it to be.
So judging whether or not a visual aid is helping does it reduce the questions that the players have? If players are constantly asking more and more questions, maybe something got missed. Maybe another visual aid could have aided in that situation. Or maybe it's a situation of not everyone views the same thing the same way. There might be different, levels of cognitive collaboration happening at the table, where they're like, well, I see a ladder in this scene, but I don't see it going anywhere. And the other person's like, well, I missed the ladder entirely. Let them, play in the space, let them expand the space as needed.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. Yeah,
I think
it's why I've moved away. Even on when I run a game on Roll20 now, I use my classic map. So there's no graphics, there's no foliage, there's no mess within the map, and the players. I got a film I love, which is Inception, and in Inception, it's all about you create a kind of construct, and then the dreamer comes in and brings with them and fills the construct with their imaginings. And I visualize that. I think that's a great analogy when it comes to an open map, a map without clutter that you quickly describe. Everybody's got that starting point, but then everybody brings in their own imagination to fill that gap. And that's where I think, yeah, you're in a cave. And I absolutely encourage players to go, oh, I'm in a cave. Is there this in the cave? And I'll be like, yeah, actually there is. It's over here. And they'll be fantastic. Can I run up this, leap over, attack the enemy on the way past and land behind them so I'm now in a flanking maneuver? Yeah, that sounds great. Make a dexterity test, quickly resolved. You're now back. You got this bonus. Attack away. So yeah, I think that's a really great way of doing it.
Yeah, it's about reducing questions, which is really just one example of increasing smoothness of play. It's really about increasing smoothness of play, and part of smoothness is speed. And so if you're stopping every 10 seconds to ask, where is the guy? It's like, just give them some kind of visual aid. But again, there's, you're going to smoothness and speed. But there's also like, we're going fast. We have speed. In which direction? Immersive, like I'm in the world, or board game. Because I think it's too easy to turn the imagination game into a board game. And that's, going way back to what Dean said about, new players and all that, it can definitely increase the smoothness of play. If your objective is to get the scenario done, then new players might really, really appreciate a visual aid, a great battle map. But if your objective is to get fully immersed in the world, and I don't care how much you actually get done of the adventure, I want you to feel like you're here, that's a different objective that requires a different approach. So it's really all about what are you going for at that time with that group.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the answer that everyone has for everything. Well, it's all about your group.
Well, but I mean, that is true. That is actually a good answer. It's one of the reasons why, and I have to openly say this quite a bit apparently, is that I want people on with different perspectives. I want somebody who's more 4D. I want somebody that's more battle map. You're not going to catch it. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. You're not going to catch a properly used battle map at my table because I refuse to do it. My maps are abstract because I do agree with the concept that, maybe you have to know that the river's here and the hills here and the orc encampment's over here. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like a treasure map. And just because there happen to be hexes on it doesn't mean that those hexes really mean anything other than here's over here, here's over there, whatever, because I'm definitely more theater of the mind. But I do think visual aids do help with that. Another little trick that I learned a few years ago is everybody loves minis. I hate minis. I have like next to no minis, but I have a bunch of standees. So I bring the standees, they bring the minis, and guess what? Now they know who's on their team and who's on my team, so to speak. So little things like that I've found help. But anyway, not my show. It's your guys' time. I want to, well, go ahead.
Okay, so as far as like battle grids and battle mapping, again, this comes from my days of 3.5 playing. If you're gonna play tactical game, tactical maneuvers, and tactical combat for almost every scene, then absolutely grid it out, map it out, put things in the scene intentionally for your players to interact with, or for your enemies to use against your players. There's nothing wrong with that style or that method of play. I enjoyed it for over 20 years. Like I was very much playing effectively chess against other players and game masters at the table, but it was a elevated form of chess. It wasn't just, my row of pawns and my other pieces. No, it was, I had a single piece. I had single piece abilities, and I had to work with everyone else around me. And tactical gaming can be a lot of fun, especially when there's a huge victory, or when when everything's coming down to the final roll because everyone is, at their final hit points, and everyone's like, I'm out of abilities to use. I don't have any magic. I don't have any more potions. What are we doing? And those nail biting moments can be super fun on a tactical grid. Like, I am limited to this space. What do I do next? Like, what can I possibly imagine out of this entire scenario that fits within the context? And thinking in again, tactical gaming, thinking that method can be a lot of fun. I find it enjoyable. And as a matter of fact, I still play as a player at 3.5. I may not run 3.5, but I still play it. And there are moments where I'm like, oh, we've gotten ourselves into a situation. How are we going to get out of this? Because we have this space and only this space to work within. And there's no fudging, no budging around like what's around us. What we see is what we get, and we are screwed.
Yeah, I feel that they're two different flavors of play. One, and I ran 3.5 for a long time. Did a bit of Fourth Ed, which was another sort of tactical based game, a little bit faster than 3.5, but you know, and the mindset's very different. The players react very differently to both styles of game. And if you got the players who love that tactical play, they will love 3.5. They will prefer to look and count squares because that's where they get their excitement. That's where they get their immersion. They become part of the world when they're counting squares to see if they can charge in, to see whether that fireball can land and only hit their enemies. And that's what they get from the game. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's an exciting game. But you put them into more theatre of the mind, and they'll probably start to switch off because they can't visualize it. They will prefer to have a tactical map. And of course, you have a lot of players who you can do both and will have a preference depending on which group they're with. But yeah, 3.5, it had its issues, but I think the tactical side of it was spot on. It was a good game.
Yeah, there are those are two of the 4 quadrants of this game experience we all sit and play. There's the immersion into the world. I feel like I'm there, and then there's the gameplay part. Like I'm fighting and trying to win. Like there is winning D&D. It is a thing where you're winning. The combat. You're winning the game. You're winning like the fight, etc. There is a sort of catharsis and thrill we get from winning and victory, and that is a totally legitimate part of the game. And so, though I do think that the first quadrant comes first, that I want you immersed in the world first, I technically value both of them equally. That yes, I want you immersed in the world, but winning and accomplishing and beating that encounter and using all your wits and all your abilities to overcome the challenge is absolutely an equal part of what makes the game satisfying to play.
Well, we're definitely going to cover a bit more of that in the next segment, because I think the next segment, if I remember correctly, is all about.
I'm looking forward to it. I know we've been inching into it.
Grid-based versus, but I do want to finish up here with terms of more like handouts and other visual tools that you might use at the table. So this is Dean's segment, so I'm going to start with him. What habits help you decide when a scene needs a visual aid at all versus when adding one would just create either more assumptions or confusion than clarity?
I typically, if I'm preparing something and I feel the visual aid will have clues, important information that may be missed, or that is designed to be hidden, I will definitely do a visual aid. If I'm ad-libbing a bit, then visual aids definitely don't come in unless it's a roughly sort of scrawled note. So my visual aids only come in when it's prepared, and typically only when there is a definite benefit to the party to take the time to read it, to analyze it, and to see if there's anything being missed. So a treasure map is a great one. A note that might have hidden subtext within it, or a note with a lot of information. I've even had handouts on lore, so where the party come across a lot of lore, they do some research, and I will hand them a page of what they find, because I don't want the players spending the next half hour writing notes, and I'd rather they just had those notes straight in front of them, and it saves them time. They can always refer back to them. And I guess that's the last time. If they need a constant reference back, I will put it if it's important. So lore dumps are kind of fall into that category. It's here's what you know, here's what you've learned, and then one player is typically the lore keeper in the group, and they'll keep all the notes. And then on the most critical session, they'll leave the character sheet at home.
That's why I keep all the character sheets.
Well, I like that.
One of the things that I've done, because I got into 3D printing as a kind of a side hobby. And one of the things that I would do is I would 3D print objects of relative importance to a scene. Now, this is like a Starfinder's the official badge, so to say, within Starfinder. And I will plant this at the table. And when somebody discovers like a clue or something, I'll hand them something like this, a 3D printed, doodad, for them to kind of, actually physically handle at the table. And it puts their mind, again, in the scene. It anchors their imagination to what's happening at the table. And it gives them something physical to interact with. Now, some players are very fidgety. I'm one of those players. And giving them something to physically interact with the table keeps them from like stacking dice and being a distraction as well. That's, side effect of it. But it gives them something to ponder. It gives them something to look at and be like, why is this here? It makes no sense that we find this, whatever this badge is, in a cave. Why is this here? And it gets those questions churning. It gets them, looking forward to what happens next. Or it might answer a question of like, oh, hey, remember we found that door with like strange, cut inset, into the wall. I wonder if we press this there, if it opens that door.
Yeah, when it comes to handouts and all that kind of thing, you mentioning the scenario that players at the table and thinking all that, it reminded me that the game mostly exists in our imaginations, in the theater of the mind. But when you give them a physical handout, it brings a little bit of that world into the real world, and it makes it real. And when they see that, when they see the letter or the badge, they have an extra respect for the world. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't just my mind. This is real. Like, this is a real thing. This came from a real place. It makes it lends credence and concreteness to all the rest of the imagined world. Even if you only bring in one tiny part of the imagined world and make it concrete, it makes all the rest of the world feel concrete by association. And so you reminded me, that's actually a very good outcome of printing even just tiny things, is that it spreads to the rest of the world. The rest of the world feels more real now because I know this part of it is real and this part came from that world, so the world must be real and consistent. Yeah, I've got to do that more. My poor players in my current game are suffering so much because I haven't printed anything.
I like actually printing objects from characters' backstories as well. If I can find like a little doodad or something of a character's backstory, I will bring that into the table, especially if it's a long lost item that they're like, I haven't thought about that thing in years, and suddenly they see like a carved wooden horse or soldier's horse, in amongst debris that's going to anchor them to their characters in the world more concretely, as you said.
Yeah, or a journal. I would love to have like an actual like I have several journals. I never get to play in games and use them, but if I ever played in a game as a fantasy adventure, I would totally have a leather-bound journal with the strings and whatnot, and open it up and actually take my notes in the journal in character. I would love to do that. That's something that makes...
When I was in the Air Force, actually even before then, from high school through the Air Force, not so much after that, there was at least one person, if not two or three at my table, who would do that. And it was absolutely amazing because you could do a session recap. And I always said, if you do it from the perspective of your character, no matter how wrong that information is, because it's how your character sees it, that's worth experience points.
Yeah. There was one visual aid I actually forgot that I've introduced recently, and that's using, I got a set of poker chips, so they're ceramic poker chips, feel lovely, very, very tactile. And we have a stamina spell point system, so you rapidly use stamina spell points and then they get replenished. So there's a lot of rubbing out and crossing out on your character sheet. So I brought in the chips and I hand out the tokens effectively to represent people's pools of stamina spell points. And the side effect is you can glance across the table and you know how tired or how wary someone is, or how much power they're lacking. And it creates another level of tension when you got your tank who's constantly burning stamina to mitigate wounds, to brace against an impact. And all the players are just seeing their stamina go down, and they know when that last chip is put to one side and spent, their front line's going to go down. And all of a sudden you got the back line or the spellcasters going, yeah, I'm going to really start to pull out the stops to save this person. And it's a great visual aid. It's a mechanical aid, but it really it informs player decision and creates immersion.
Interesting.
All right. Well, I think we need to start getting ready to get into the next segment here. Any final comments you guys want to talk about when it comes, generally speaking, to visual aids? We're going to hit battle maps, I think, in this next segment. But anything else on visual aids we didn't cover that you want to address real quickly? We're ready to move on. All right, I'm going to guess we're ready to move.
Vicky's mentioned one. So, sorry, the chat. I've also got an hourglass. It's a minute glass. And if a player is dithering, I just turn it over. I don't say anything. And if they don't notice the sand's running down, the moment the sand finishes, I just go, right, your turn's done, next person. And I've caught a few players out where they're dithering, they don't know what they're doing, and it's like, well, you obviously don't want to act. So
you are so much nicer than I am.
I wouldn't have expected that from you, Dean. I thought you would be so nice. I wouldn't have expected you to take someone's turn because they were dithering. My goodness.
Oh no, I the one thing that annoys me in a combat is players who are indecisive, because you've got a fast-paced combat happening, and indecisiveness means you lose your turn. If you don't know what you're doing, and it means the players in between turns aren't on their phones. They're looking at the battle. They're keeping up to speed with what's happening, so they're ready to leap into action.
I totally agree. I'm looking forward to talking about this.
It's funny. I disagree with people almost 100% of the time when it comes to things like that slows down the game. Shut up. It's literally part of the game. It doesn't slow down the game, but on that one concept right there where it's like, oh, my turn. Let me see here. I want to, no, dude, we're moving on. Apparently your character was daydreaming while the fight was happening. You need to be immersed in here. I've mentioned this a few times. There's a guy at a table in the Air Force, and Heathen Dog can vouch for this one. He used to pull out his Game Boy when it wasn't his turn anymore. And then he'd get mad like, well, I didn't know that was going on. Well, should have paid attention to the game. You're screwed, and because I don't play that. You are there to be immersed. You're there to be part of it. You're there to keep everything going. Now, you'll never convince me that rolling initiative slows down a game. You're never going to convince me that action reaction or an aspect of playing a game slows it down, because it's literally the game. But the person who is, as you said, dithering, that is slowing down the game for everybody.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to define what is the game, but we'll get to that.
If the person asks whose turn is it, it's taken too long.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't think rolling initiative is playing the game. That's not the game I'm playing. I'm trying to play the game where I'm in an imaginary world, and the characters in the world are not rolling initiative. So why am I? Right?
Because combat's a scrum and you don't know who's going first.
Well, sure, that's okay to have variable initiative, but rolling and adding dexterity modifier and the GM aligning everyone in order, that is not playing the game for me. That's literally playing the game. There's no for you in that. That's literally the game. We'll talk about that.
That's a different topic.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to all the panelist channels. Your support keeps the conversation going and reach more tabletop RPG fans. We may even be looking for you as a panelist. Who knows? Sign up on the GMI Discord. Link is in the description. Read the rules and find a panel topic that interests you real quickly, because it's not up yet. But I told these guys, May is up. We got basically no signups for May. So maybe we won't have any shows in May. I don't know. Apparently nobody wants to talk about mystery and investigation and detective work or whatever, even though that is one of those hotly brought up questions. Like, you should have a topic about how to run a good mystery. Well, I've got a few of them. Anyway, and then in June, we're going to be talking about things outside of D&D. We got West Marches. We got IP-based games. We've got, I forget what the other one was, but there are a few different types of questions we've got for doing more indie-style games. Why do people do this? So that will be in June. I'll hopefully get those questions up soon. Anyway, so with that, coming soon, segment 2 here, we're going to have grid-based precision versus abstract theater all the way. And before we do that, let's go check some super chats out here. We got, Poly Robotics is a new member. He's not a new member. He's a continuing member. They should change that terminology. Thank you, Poly Robotics. Lord Mattia says, good note-taking is a skill. Miss something? Tough. Bad guys win. Now deal with the consequences. Love it. What do you guys think?
That is one way of looking at it.
It comes down to the players who turn around and say, if you do that, you end up with one or two problems. One, the game bogs down because players take excessive notes because they're so scared of missing something.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I've been there. And two, I'm happy if someone's playing a wizard, they've got a high intelligence, but they've missed something, to just send them a message. So I typically use Messenger or something like that to inform players of stuff their characters would know, but they probably have forgotten. And then they can role play that out. Oh, hang on, guys, didn't we? And normally it's enough just to jog their memory, and they go, oh yeah, that happened. Ah, yeah, I know what relevance that has now.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jake. Okay, fine. I'll go. Where was I? The skill issue thing. I do kind of agree. I probably mostly agree, because my whole goal for my my channel, my company, everything is to encourage people to unite the player's experience with the character's experience. Diegesis, full diegesis. So I really don't like the attitude, the idea that, oh, well, my character would know this. Well, my character's smarter than I am. My character's more competent than I am. We should be able to have a whole minute of talking tactics at the top of the round, because our characters know each other and our characters are really skilled and we know how to work together. I don't like any of that at all. That is deliberately separating your experience from your character's experience and offloading everything onto them. Who's playing the game, you or your character? Are we here to watch your character be smart and do cool stuff? Or are you here to be smart? Are you here to have an adventure? Are you here to do cool stuff? My whole thing is, I want you as the player to have the adventure. I want you as the player to feel the triumph and to beat the obstacle, not just tell a story about a character doing it. I detest the term storytelling game, because are we here to tell a story about Grognard being a hero? Or are you here to be a hero? I want you to have the personal experience of doing that thing and not just telling a story about someone else doing it. So yes, if you don't remember something, that means you don't remember it. You forgot, which means your character forgot it. I don't like the separation between player and character so much. Sure, there is some, but I dial it way back from where it currently seems to be in the zeitgeist right now, where, oh, player and character are totally separate, and that's a good thing. I say no. Let's bring them together, and let's have player skill where we can have player skill, and we'll have character skill where we cannot have player skill, such as literally swinging a sword or doing an acrobatic.
No. If you want diegesis, Rob, bring in the sword, and we're going to have that fight.
Yes, if you want to dodge an enemy, I'll throw something at you, and if you get out the way, then well done, you've dodged it. If not,
you can dodge a wrench.
If you can dodge a wrench.
I've got a wrench here. You want to dodge? No. So within the context of sitting down at a table, any way that I can unite with my character's experience, I want to do as much as possible within the context of sitting at a table.
It's a completely different way of doing it, but for the old school grognards out there who might want to poo-poo that, and to be fair, I don't agree with them, but with that said, remember, a lot of old school games were player-based, less character-based. That's why the characters didn't have skills. They just had classes, and then from there, it was up to you. So before you just jump on like, I would never do that, that's the dumbest thing ever, what game are you playing? A rule cyclopedia? Really? You don't say. Holmes edition? You don't say. So like I think he's doing it in a way that's different, but just remember, conceptually, it started off being player driven. Now I'm Hickman Manifesto, so I'm 100% in the character driven. My character is my character is never me, and I want my character to be me. But again, whole different aspect and topic. So I won't dive down.
Yeah, that is an entirely different topic in my opinion. But good note taking for players can lead to them digging up something that I, as the game master, may have forgotten. They might go, "Oh, hey, remember we got this one thing that did this thing that we didn't think was useful back then? Yeah, it might be useful now." And I might go, "Oh, yeah, I have that. I might have that in my notes somewhere. Cool, you found it. Good job." And I kind of, I let them go digging through their notes, as long as it's in their notes that, they had it at whatever time. And if they, notate the date and the time that they got it, cool. I don't need my players to go that far. But at the same time, as the game master, and again, this is actually in this book, the game master oath basically is, I will remember everything. And that doesn't necessarily mean I will take notes on everything. I will have, perfect memory. That does not what that means is I will remember everything. It's like when I put something into the field of play, I put it there with intention, more than likely. And I will remember what its intention is supposed to be. So I should have good notes on that. I don't need necessarily have my players have good notes on it. I need to have good notes. Now, the other side of I will remember everything is I will remember the actions your players took, and I will make commensurate consequences to those actions. Because everything a player does has an effect on the world in some way.
That's kind of your whole job, yeah.
So I will remember everything.
All right. And then this isn't a super chat, but I thought it was a good question. Somebody snuck in here. You got lucky. But Cyrus Wright says, question for GM Insight Group. What do you think of those Lazy Susan 3-zone terrain? We'll start with, obviously, Dean. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the term Lazy Susan 3-zone terrain. Could someone sort of inform me?
It's a couple different circles. We'll say 3 circles. You have an inner circle and an outer circle that rotates around it, and then an outer circle that rotates around that. And so the way the 3-zone combat works is if you're in this zone, you can attack anyone in that zone. You don't have to worry about movement. You can spend 1 movement to move to the next zone, and then you can attack and interact with anyone in that zone, etc.
Okay, so similar to a computer-based, turn-based game where you got front ranks, back ranks, and
it
stuff
can
like that.
be. It's a little more abstract than this. So here's one of mine.
All right.
Oh yeah, I got a little more hexy side on that one, and then here's my other one. One I've actually used more.
Yeah.
And I have the Lazy Susan on the floor, but it's too heavy. Now, I use it for Forbidden Lands. Now, somebody asked you, so that's the 3-zone concept, because Forbidden Lands literally uses zones in the game. For like you have close, short, medium. Like that's I think medium is like 4 or
Close,
5
near,
zones,
far.
and long. I forget what it is off the top of my head, but
Double near.
Those zones determine modifiers and what you can shoot into, how far you can shoot, yada yada. So they make for me, they do really well for that, because if they're confined, I can do something in that inner circle and put all the little terrain stuff that they need there, and then a little more abstract in the outer ring, or the middle ring, where it's just like, okay, look, you got a copse of trees here, you got this over there, do your thing, and then in the outer ring, I just place them in the outer ring, basically in the cardinal directions of wherever they are. So that they know it's like you're back this way and you're not here yet, or you know that there's some enemies, some reinforcements coming from that way, and you've got a few rounds before you can do something, whatever. It's because they know that's there. So it's a nice abstract way of just saying something's happening on that side. Do you want to deal with it now or later?
Okay, so it's very much party in the middle. If anything enters that middle zone, you can melee it. If anything's in the middle, in that very center zone, if anything's in the middle zone, you can shoot at it, but with no penalties. Yeah. Anything in the outer zone, it's long range, you shoot at it with penalties.
Unfortunately, I found that they're too small for me is my problem. That's why I don't use them as much as I'd like to, but I do generally like them. I just need one that's like 4 feet.
Yes. My view on that is if it works at your table, if it creates the immersion you're looking for, if it creates the flow, the game you want, then there's nothing wrong with it. I think I would struggle with it because I'm just not familiar with it. First time I've heard of it, but I would love to be in a game, a one-shot where they use it so I can experience it and find out.
Well, if I'm ever in the UK, my Forbidden Lands game, I use it for that because I have a very particular one-shot that I run. It's a convention-style one-shot for Forbidden Lands, and I pull it out for that. But I don't know the next time I'm going to be out in the UK is.
Yeah.
Yeah, UDT is very good for placing, different terrain pieces, different figs, placing them in the zones, and then what's in those zones is what's in those zones, and players can only interact with things in their zone. And Lazy Susan just allows them to rotate the scenery or the play space so they can get a better angle on what's around them.
If we're talking about opinions, I don't like them because my whole thing is, first of all, theater of the mind. I want you to be anchored and grounded in the fictional place. And if that's not enough, then I'll give you some kind of the next step up is an abstract map where I say, okay, here's the tree over there, and this thing, it's about, 60 feet between there. And I literally use sticky notes, and I draw really, it's like the tiniest thing ever, because I try to practice as much as possible low fidelity maps, because I don't want them to rely on the map. I want them to look at the map and say, that's insufficient. I guess I have to use my imagination. Exactly. I don't want the map to be so detailed that you can use it, all the way, unless as I said before, you really, really have to. As much as possible, I want to give you, here's an aid, here's a little help, left and right. Okay, I see the orientation. Now I can better imagine it. So I don't like the Lazy Susan because it is not consistent. It's not real. Like, you look at it, you're like, that's not, like, especially it's rotating around. It's like, that's not actually how the terrain looks. And so if I'm trying to ground you into a real place, using something that's so abstract like that is counter to my purposes.
Okay. It's funny how similar and yet how far apart you and I are in some of these things. All right. Well,
yeah, we've definitely strayed into the next segment.
Yeah, let's move on into the next segment here, which covers grid-based precision versus abstract theater, and meet our second panelist. And by the way, everybody should thank Arch for being here. He's under the weather, and he's toughing it out. So I appreciate that, especially since, when we get to the third segment, you'll find out that Jade was the backup. Originally was going to be the backup for him, but ended up being the backup for somebody else. So it's been a fun day so far. But let's go ahead and meet him. Who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Hello, I am Matthias, the Archmaster. I run the YouTube channel Architrave Gaming, and I could not miss another panel with Dean, and so I had to show up, sick or not. My tabletop adventure game experience, because I don't believe that role-playing games have been invented yet, is that I've only been playing for about 4 years. I started with D&D 5e, and I've only dabbled in a couple of other systems, but mostly I've been doing research and learning about, essentially, as the synopsis of me and my philosophy and everything. A long time ago, I realized that life was a game, and that the ultimate game designer was the one that designed life. And so if I want to design the ultimate game, I just have to find the principles that underpin how real life is designed and translate those to tabletop, and that'll be the best game ever. And that's what I've been trying to do. I call it the culmination of fantasy, Arches of Absalom. So yeah, you can find more of my insane ramblings on my channel.
And his channel is in the description like everybody else's. So check that out. Be sure to click on it, subscribe, and watch all his fun videos there. Now, Arch, are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
When you compare grid-based play with abstract mapping and pure theater of the mind, what does each approach do best for movement, tactics, pacing, fairness, yada, 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 cinematic action? And where have you found that one method creates better decisions while the others create frustration, confusion, or unnecessary?
Well, prepare for a recap of the last segment. So my goal when I'm running the game, actually, being a table runner, is I especially in combat. We'll go with combat for now. In combat, my goal is to make you feel like you're there. Immersion. There are two major types of immersion: immersion into the world, and then immersion into the activity itself of the game, like the rolling the dice, the winning the combat. Right? There's the flow state, and then there's verisimilitude. Two different kinds of immersion. Okay, I want you to have both. So when the actual experience that the character is having at the table, or in the fiction, is there's a giant monster and he's running at me with a claw and he's yelling at me and I've got to try to dodge or stab him, right? That's what he's experiencing. So therefore, if I want you to experience that, imagination, my description, the theater of the mind is going to be my first weapon, and my weapon most of the time that I'm going to try to use exclusively as much as I can. Because I can describe the monster running up and trying to attack you and the impact on your chest, and I can do all of that, and I can transport you to that world. I find that whenever you put a grid and minis, I don't like minis either. Whenever you put that right in front of the players, they immediately completely exit the mind's eye and they enter the physical eye, the real world, and they're looking at something like, okay, he's 5 feet away from me, and there's no amount of description. No, he's running at you. He's not just a mini standing there like this. He's actually running up at you and attacking you. No amount of my description will ever breach the barrier of their eyes, of what they see. They do not see the owlbear rushing. They see the owlbear standing there 5 feet away in little perfect grid. That's what they see. That is reality to them. And so I only bring that up as a last resort when I absolutely have to, because there's just no way that my description will override what they actually see. And the middle ground, the one that I use, when necessary, and I try not to go past this, is an abstract map. I talked about it with the sticky notes and whatnot. I'll just make a little like, you know, whether it's a grid or a dungeon or anything, like I'll just like, okay, here's the room, here's the like a line for the desk in the middle of the room, and there's a dot for the dresser, and the line over here for the bed, and there's a, you know, two little lines like this for the doorway. And then they can see the room. They know where it is. They know if they're on the right side of the room or the left side of the room. They know if the other guy's on the other side of the desk. But it's so abstract that they are forced to use the mind's eye. They are forced to enter the fiction, like we call it, enter a theater of the mind, aka the fiction. That is the fiction. The fiction is the theater of the mind. That is where the game resides. It is a game of imagination. The game takes place in our heads. So, yeah, I find that the grid is does more harm than good, unless you are using it, as I stated previously, in a situation where it absolutely requires it. And for the most part, I use theater of the mind because it's the go-to, it's the default. Let me look at that question again. By
the way, those qualifiers at the end are just memory, or brain, as I like to call it. They get the brain juices flowing, so you don't have to hit each one directly. But if you can think of things, so for example, so for the public out there, where you found that one method creates better decisions while the other creates frustration, confusion, or unnecessary limits, he doesn't have to answer directly to that. He can say, oh, well, I see the problem here. I see the good, the pros and cons, basically. The idea is to get the brain juices flowing for the folks.
Yeah, it feels like there's something I didn't mention, but I'll probably remember it when someone else talks. I'll pass it on.
Okay. All right, guys, you want to follow up with what he was saying there? Or what are your thoughts?
I'd like to tackle a phrase you said, a statement. The grid does more harm than good. And I'd like to actually object to that.
Unless it's used when it's absolutely necessary to be used.
Even in that qualifier.
Okay.
People are all different. And if you've got a bunch of players who their imagination is based on what they see, and then they build on that, the grid is the perfect medium for them to become immersed in that world. And I've had fights where I've had players looking at the grid. I put models down, and they've been like, wow, and they've seen a load of goblins models being put there, and instantly their eyes are now beginning to fire because they're visualizing those models as an army of goblins coming over the hill. And it's the medium they work best in. But I've also had players where you put models down and they kind of switch off, but you start describing stuff and they're immediately going, and you can see the cogs turning, and they're now going, yeah, okay, we can visualize that. I did an Earthdawn campaign where I described a scene, a bunch of cadavers coming up over a hill, people running away from it, and it created one of the most memorable encounters we've ever had. And all of that was theater of the mind. There were no maps, nothing like that. But I've also had incredible combats and encounters that have had grids and models and all the rest. I think both work really well. So yeah, I'm just objecting to that statement.
And I have not had 39 years of experience, and I have not ever played with players. I've never met players that do not switch off when the minis and the models and the battle map is brought out. So they may exist out there, and maybe with those players, the grid is actually a tool, an aid to their imagination. But I've never seen that. And my experience just says, like, from my experience, it does more harm than good. And I, like every YouTuber out there, like Dungeon Tuber, the complaints have always been, yeah, you bring out the minis and whatnot, and everyone switches off. So I'm not trying to use some appeal to authority to browbeat you. You're wrong or anything. But I think if I were to guess, it's a lot more common that people switch off their imagination when they're presented with visuals rather than the other way around.
I would agree with that. If there's too much in the way of visuals, if there's what's become in vogue is these battle maps that have every blade of grass.
Yes.
And players, it's too much information. The player gets overloaded, they switch off. And I would agree in that situation. You have to have the right level of detail to allow the imagination to flourish.
Which is very little detail.
And I found since using Roll20, I started on very beautifully drawn maps, and I quickly backed away to simple line-drawn maps that the players then use my descriptions and their imagination to fill in.
Completely on the same page. That's exactly what I do. I have hundreds of beautiful maps and whatnot, and I'll never use them because they just don't serve their purpose.
No, they don't.
See, I come from Battle Grid playing. Like that's my origins, is battle grid playing and very tactical movements. And for those games, you need tactical clarity. You need to know how far something is. You need to know whether or not they're in range of your weaponry or your spells or what have you. So there are those games that the battle grid is the game, and everything your character does on the map is the game. And then you have the games that are more theater of the mind, like games like World of Darkness or Vampire the Masquerade, anything in that series, that all happen here. They don't really need visual aids because they happen in the modern world. They happen in modern times. So when I say, hey, you find yourself at 8th and Wacker in Chicago, I don't even know if that's actually an intersection or not, but people from that area like, oh yeah, I can imagine what's on the corner there. Or Limburg and I don't know, one of the cross streets. It's been forever since I've been in St. Louis, but players can go, oh yeah, especially for modern games, yeah, I can see what that is in my mind. Like I know what's on that corner. But for games that are tactical based, you kind of need the space for them to move in. However, I have shifted to more abstract gaming or more abstract visuals because I'm working in index card RPG instead. I'm working in very streamlined games that need to remove some of the cognitive load. Like I don't really need to know if your character's going to sneak up and they don't have quite enough movement to get behind the person to backstab them. Okay, I'm going to be working in close, near, far scenarios. This is that whole 3 zoned combat. It's anything that you are close to, you're within striking distance. Anything that's near to you can still hit you with ranged weaponry or potentially pikes and spears. But things that are far away, well, you're going to have to spend 2 movements to get there. You have to cross into near distance, and then you can cross into far distance. Now Max can share it if he wants, but I've got.
Yeah, I have to mess with my screen to do this, but yeah, bear with me just one moment.
Okay, but I'm using Roll20 and images that because I'm running a Bronze Age game. I'm using images that are supposed to invoke that Bronze Age setting. So I've got the ziggurat here, the huts and whatnot, and that's to help anchor. Again, this gets back to the idea of anchoring the player's mind to the scene and the visuals of what's in the area. Now, is this a battle map? Not really. Can you use it like a battle map? You absolutely can. If that's the way you want it. Like this character here can find themselves in the camp of was it the Tara. And the players get to move their character tokens to those places and interact with what's in that space. Now, do I have what's in that space? Absolutely. That's in my notes. Do I need to put it on the screen? No, I don't need to put my what exactly they can interact with there. Now, am I gonna go into detail of what or bring a scene of what's in that wigwam there? No, that can play out in the theater of the mind. But just having a visual aid to be like, oh yeah, we're in this city. We're not expecting combat because we are in the city. Now, if I transport them to a scenario where they might expect combat. I don't even know if I have one here. Okay, the court scene. They might find themselves in court and they're like, things are not going our way. Things are tighter. Things are more compressed here. We might be in a scenario where we're going to battle, and I might throw down the 3 circles of close, near, far, and then they interact and they still have that background, that backdrop of this is what the scene is, but now you're moving within it. And then, just lock the room into your mind, but now there's going to be combat. So, I mean, that's how I've been using visuals lately, to kind of bring the mind's eye to a space and kind of set the imagery within their mind. And again, this gets into the concept of, well, this object makes sense to be in the scene. Would there be a weapons rack in the corner? Sure, that could happen. In the courtroom, probably not. In a barracks, absolutely.
I think I pretty much completely agree with you, that that's the whole purpose of art. Is this sets the scene? This is where you are. This is the visual. It's not meant to be a substitute for your imagination when it comes to walking through that place or a battle there. But I say the more art, the better. If you can show me a screenshot of every single place I go to, that makes me more immersed into the world. That's awesome. And that's separate subject, but that's something that I kind of clash with co-creation on, where it's like, I want the world to be consistent. I want to know that what I see is what I get. I want that to be the way it is. And if everything's so wishy-washy that it can just be co-created whenever you want, anything can change, then it just doesn't feel as real. Then it doesn't feel as real as if I can just see the thing and say, that's what it looks like.
So I want to ask this question to Jade first, even though it's Arch's, and I'm doing this intentionally because I think he knows who I'm talking. Actually, I'm just going to mention his name. People like Connell, who apparently don't even have an imagination. Connell and I have argued many, many times where he can't sit at a theater of a mind table. He'd never be at my table, whatever, because he just cannot visualize. He can't do it. He has to have the miniatures in order to know what's going on. Can you talk about, since you know Connell, can you talk about that momentarily?
Connell is one of my closest friends. I've known him for almost 2 decades now. And I understand his need for visual aids, because some people's minds don't work the way maybe Arcmaster's mind works, where they can visualize the scenery in their head. Some people need additional anchor points for their mind's eye, and then there are those who just, when they try to put something into their mind, they lose it almost instantly. That, like, nothing is like permanent there. Visuals just aren't permanent unless they can see them visually at the table. And I believe that that's kind of the way Connell's mind works. He needs the visual aids as reminders of where he is and what he's doing, as not necessarily him himself, but his character. He needs the visual reminders of, okay, my character is in that area. There are 5 enemies arrayed ahead of me, and I need to be able to start taking them down one at a time or spread shot them to reduce the enemies coming at my team from this side. And that visual reminder of for him at the table is something that he can focus on. It gives him something to lock in on. Now, when another player, takes down one of those enemies, I flip the character over. The mini falls over. It's like, okay, that's one less I have to worry about. Now I can, when it becomes my turn, I know who I'm striking first. I know like which ones have been hit. I can see like arrows or burns, spell burns on those characters. I know which ones to go after to knock down next. And sometimes those are condition rings, or sometimes there's other visual aids I'll put onto the table to, again, help with the cognitive load, reduce the cognitive load for the players who are not able to envision it in their mind, but able to envision it in the space, the physical space.
That is a condition called aphantasia, when someone can't visualize something. There are various levels of your ability to imagine. One is, we use an apple as a baseline, where you can envision an apple, but is it black and white or does it have color? And then can you envision the light shining off of the apple and the what's it called, reflection and whatnot? And then can you turn the apple? And that's kind of like the highest level, where it's like, oh yes, I can turn the apple. That's you communicating that, yes, I have an imagination where I can actually manipulate what I see in my mind's eye. My mind's eye is like, I can turn the apple and imagine bites out of it and turn it into a spaceship. My imagination is as good as memory. It's as good as CGI. But yes, aphantasia is the opposite end, where you cannot even imagine an apple. You understand the concept of an apple. You know what an apple is, but you can't imagine it. I personally, with how much of a visual person I am, I don't know how someone lives like that. How can you remember a face?
I'm with you.
How can you describe someone's face? How do you recognize anyone? How do you live life if you can't remember a visual image? I don't understand how anyone works like that. But I have a sister-in-law who says she has aphantasia, and she struggled I ran games for her, and she struggled understand what was going on. But she's an artist. She's a good artist. She's drawing constantly. I'm like, girl, how in the world do you have aphantasia? It doesn't make sense. I don't know how their brains work, but it is a real thing. It boggles the mind.
So I didn't know the name for it, but obviously, it is a thing. And some players, some people, not necessarily just players, but some people struggle with that, like struggling holding that concept in the mind. I'm at the same end of the spectrum you are on that, where I can lock an image in my mind, I can slice it in half, I can turn it upside down, and I know what it looks like. I do this with at my job, what I do for work. I'm a draftsman, so I'm able to visualize when I'm turning something how it should look, and I'm able to represent that. But there are, again, people who just don't have that ability, and it's no fault of theirs, but they don't have that cognitive ability to grasp a 3D space like that.
And you just have to accommodate them, or like you could be kind of tough and say like, well, this is a game of imagination, and if you can't imagine, then you can't play. Yeah, you could do that. Or like with any kind of handicap anyone has in any activity, you just have a reasonable accommodation, and then you keep playing. So yeah, just be reasonable about it.
I'm not sure I could be at a table long term with somebody like that, because I am one of the people where at some point miniatures actually do ruin my immersion.
Me too.
Like I'm not instantly unimmersed, so to speak, but it can happen pretty quickly, because the more I see on the table, the more that's influencing my imagination, more it's taking away. And seeing that elf standing there like this all the time.
Yeah. Contrary to what he describes his elf doing.
I want to visualize him jumping, like Legolas jumping off of things and freaking out, and not just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that comes down to how we describe our turn taking. Now, if you have a player who's just like, oh, I move here, I attack that. Okay, so they are playing a board game, which that's a way of enjoyment. They can find enjoyment in that. I'm not going to knock it. I used to do that. But then you've got the player like, okay, with my movement, I'm going to throw the shield down onto the staircase. I want to ride the shield down while firing at the enemies with my multi-shot ability or my rapid shot ability. Cool. I can visualize that in my mind. I have that ability. I can see you doing that. I can see the character doing that. Because the movies did it first. So I know what it looks like. Cool. You take your actions, you fire your shots, you hit some, you miss some, we move on to the next turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. There's been, especially on X, a lot of discussion about session 0 and the usefulness of having a session 0. And for me, this is why you have that first initial session. You want to get all the players who are potentially playing in the game. You want to discuss any issues that any of them might have, issues like this that will affect the enjoyment or the longevity of the game. And you got to make sure the players around the table can work together, can work with the style of game you're running and want to be there. And session 0, I mean, back in the day, we just called it character creation.
Yeah,
Are
exactly.
you coming up to tonight for some character creation, and then we'll talk about the campaign. And it was very loose, but we live in a time where things have to be a little bit more. You have to take care of things, care of people a little bit more than you did in the past, because our hobby is growing, and we've got a lot more people now involved, a lot more people across all stratospheres of life, rather than us nerds who were outcasts in society back in the day. So session 0, it's important for these reasons, to make sure you get the right people at your table, the right style of game going forward. And if you've got someone that suffers with something like this that really affects how they can play the game, they know whether that table's suitable for them or not.
Exactly. Session 0 becomes more necessary the more diverse a group you have, different ages, different lengths of play experience, different variety of systems and play experience, powered by the Apocalypse guy hopping right in. Like you have to have a session 0. The reason why we didn't have much talk of a session 0 back in the day is because everyone that played, D&D were all the same kind of person. They were all the nerds, and you don't need to ask, hey, are we doing it like Conan or like this? I'm like, of course we're doing it like Conan. Like, so yes, but because as you said, Dean, because our hobby has grown and now we're appealing to everybody. Well, now we have, dozens and dozens of different groups and subgroups. And now you do have to have a more robust conversation about, hey, what exactly are we playing here? What are we going for? Because you go to the 4D crowd and they're like role play, and you go to another crowd and they're like storytelling, and another crowd is all like, I want the minis and the combat and whatnot. And I think it's sad that no one has developed a framework, a grid to say these are all of the different kinds of play and ways to play, and here are the the 4 quadrants that they all fit in, and here's how everyone would want to play. In order to give everyone the vocabulary to find the game they want to play. And I guess it's really not sad, because I actually plan to be the one to do that. I'm working on it right now.
Well, I think Kevin Simbita has the answer for you on that one.
Yeah.
All of you were talking at once. I didn't hear anything. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't even hear anybody. That was my bad.
Jade say something.
Oh, Jade, go ahead. Yeah, if you guys were talking.
I said I think that already exists, but I could be wrong. I think it puts the different games in different quadrants based on their strengths and weaknesses. So I know what you're talking about, and I think it quasi exists in a state. I just can't remember where I saw it.
I think some people are working on it. GNS tried and absolutely failed to do it, but I'm trying to. I think I got a better one. I think I'm building one that actually works for everyone, because it follows the principles of the 4 pillars. But I'll leave that out.
That's if you agree with the 4 pillars.
Absolutely. Yep. You're talking about a hobby space where we all have different perceptions, different things we want from the hobby. Trying to put a framework in place, I think that's almost impossible, because either it's got to be so incredibly wordy and detailed that no one's ever going to sit down and go through it, let alone understand it, or it's going to only appeal to a certain group of people who want to use it, and the rest will continue muddling through as they currently do. I don't think that there's an answer one way or the other than it's a noble thing to do. So I wouldn't say don't do it, but don't expect high adoption. But if you get some adoption, that's better than nothing. If it helps some tables, brilliant. You've done a fantastic thing.
We'll
so
see.
This is where I was saying that Kevin Simbita has the answer for this, and one of the things that he says quite vehemently is role playing is personal. That's just what it comes down to. Role playing is personal. It's going to be the expectations, what you see, how you do it. Everything about it is going to be different for different people. Just using him as the example again, he's a developer since 1981, and he's done his own stuff, and he's well known in the hobby. I still bust his balls behind scenes. Like this is BS, blah blah. More so Sean than him, but still both of them, because it's personal to me in a way that is different to him, that is different to somebody else. And that's what I like about him, is because he also busts my balls back. Instead of trying to say, this is how you have to do it, he says, this is what I provided you, take it how you want, and I like that.
I will say that when it comes to grid-based games or grid-based maps and such, or visuals, it has 3 core strengths to it, really, but it also has weaknesses. Grids offer tactical precision. It offers clear lines of sight, clear lines of areas of effect, and it's great for crunchy combat systems. So if you're playing a crunchy combat system, grid's probably going to be your mainstay. But the drawback to grid systems is generally it's slower pacing. It encourages rules lawyering. Are they really out of my line of sight at this corner? And it can also turn the game into a board game more than an immersive story. So, you have to look at grid play as what it is, for its strengths, but you also have to accept its weaknesses if you are going to use it. And all of these methods have certain strengths and certain weaknesses inherent to them, and you have to identify what part of each one do you want to use. Do you want to use the grid base because it offers those clear tactical advantages, or do you want to go with something that has faster adjudication, like abstract mapping, something that gives more cinematic action?
Yeah, I've found with having played such a long time that you get these ebbs and flows. So typically, I will have a campaign. It's very grid based with tactical combat. But by the end of the campaign, we're sick and tired of counting squares and spending all that time doing that. And the next campaign, we just go, right, grids out the window. Let's just go theatre of the mind, and we enjoy that level of freedom for a period. But then towards the end of the campaign, we're sick and tired of not knowing where everybody is exactly and having arguments. No, my fireball shouldn't have hit them. I made sure the room was big enough, that kind of stuff. They've all got pros and cons. And you've got to accept the drawbacks. And if you're happy with the drawbacks, it will work for you. And maybe it's that middle ground. You have a little bit of a kind of grid, but you have a lot of theatre of the mind to encourage free thinking. But again, the system will decide. Trying to do that in 3.5, I think, is difficult because of the 5-foot steps and stuff like that. Doing it in other systems, a lot easier where the system itself supports more theatre of the mind.
That's an interesting thing you brought up. I think even if you found a perfect middle ground that did everything and satisfied both sides, people would still get bored of it simply because humans operate off of a yin yang. Like we breathe in and breathe out, and our hearts contract and then they retract. We're always going to get bored of the same thing. So it's actually maybe built into the natural cycle of play to have the grid and whatnot, and then have theater of the mind and grid and theater. And so I think they both have a place because not only do they serve different purposes, but they also keep things fresh. So I don't think that the goal is even to find a perfect middle ground. My goal would be find when to use each of them so that you have that ebb and flow.
Typically in a campaign, I will try and mix up different styles, and it's not unusual in a sort of 3-4 year campaign to have elements of the campaign which go deep into horror, then back into sort of dungeoneering, then back into, and I try and mix it up. I try and keep the ebbs and flows within the game. Sometimes there'll be need for this deep tactical combat, and other times it will be swift, quick combats that we don't have battle maps for. And I find that typically works quite well.
Yeah,
All right,
I also. Oh, go ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
Okay. I also, generally have a mix at the table of encounters. Each encounter will have its own space, so to say. You could have the exacting grid as in one encounter. A court scene might just be one of those abstract images that I shared earlier. But then pure theater of the mind happens kind of in those in-between moments where you're traveling to a place, and I don't necessarily have a visual prepared, but I can describe the scene well enough that you feel, or your character can be placed there in the mind's eye. So mixing the three, and finding your balance of when to use which one is key to your game mastering style. And figure out what your players want. Your players want nothing but, grid-based combat. Okay, run that. Do your characters want more theater of the mind, abstractness? Cool, run that. Find out what your players want and move in that direction. I think that's the best advice I could give you is talk with your players. Find out what they're into.
Actually, I'm the game master and I'm in charge. It only matters what I want.
No, to be fair, right? That's a valid point. But session 0, make that known and let your players know this is the style of game. There's no negotiation. I'm not going to bend to your will. And if the players go, actually, that's the style of game I want to play, brilliant. You're going to make magic at the table. But if they turn around and go, well, actually, it's not for me. We got to be adult. And you got to, a player has to know that they can walk away from a table and there's no hard feelings. And a DM or GM can turn around to a player and say, look, what you're looking for isn't what I do. But I think a lot of GMs, DMs, they'll try naturally to tailor their game to the players, because the best enjoyment you get is when your players are enjoying the game. And so you will naturally... and a big objection from Max. So... Yeah.
I mean, I guess that depends what you mean, but again, that's another topic for another time. But no, I always tell people you're sitting at my table and you're going to get the game I provide. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that they have zero say whatsoever. It's just I have a very small box worth of limits that they can.
But you make that completely clear at the start.
Oh,
and
yeah,
a
yeah,
player who sits at your table understands that, and they're happy to accept that, and that's perfect.
My favorite thing is throughout all the years that I've been doing this, of the hundreds of people, I don't know if it's hundreds, but dozens of people that I would never sit at your table. I'd never sit at your table. And then they come by like, your table looks really fun. Yeah, too bad there's not a seat anymore because it's full. So
Yeah.
but you're right. Anyway, I've got a follow up here. We're out of time, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Arch, this goes to you because it is your segment. If we can answer this quickly, that would be awesome. If not, that's fine. I get it. But where has abstract mapping, because that's kind of where you're leaning, where has abstract mapping or theater of the mind created faster, bolder decisions, but also introduced confusion about distance and position or available options?
Made it faster, but also introduced confusion.
Basically, where's it helped the
Yeah.
situation? Is where's it caused confusion?
Yeah, I would say it that really comes down to arbiter skill or GM skill. It's how abstract is it? How much information are you actually giving? Are you accompanying your little drawing with description? If you, I haven't personally experienced, like, I guess this is a little brag. I haven't personally experienced my own abstract drawings causing confusion, because I think I do a decent job with my abstract drawings.
Somebody played Pictionary.
But it really just has to do with how well you're drawing that thing out and how much you're able to anchor the player's imagination in the world. I think that's one thing that my in pretty much every game that I've run with every group, someone tells me, I really feel like I'm there. Like the way your descriptions work, I'm there. I feel it. I see it. It's awesome. I feel present. And so that's something that I guess I don't really have to be super good at drawing the abstract maps, because my description makes up for it. Because apparently my description is good enough that people feel like they're there. And so with someone with less descriptive ability, maybe you have to be a little more concrete with your maps and less abstract. But that really just has to do with your own personal skill. And, like, you have to have 100. So is it like 40-60 or 50-50? Like that's you just finding your mix of drawing, your abstraction versus your description.
Okay. I had follow-ups for the other two as well, but we really do have to move on to the next segment. I had a couple of tactical ones, but maybe we'll hit those in the members only.
Maybe. You got to be a member to see that, though.
Yeah, got to be a member to see that. That's right. So you know what? Maybe there's a reason for that. So don't forget to share the stream, tap the hype button, help us get this discussion trending. You or someone may make an amazing panelist, especially for May. We need some for May. Sign up on the GMI Discord. The link is in the description. Read the rules and find a panel topic that interests you. In segment 3, our panelists will talk about the influence of aesthetics on atmosphere. Now, once again, as always happens when you go into segment 3, they've already touched on this, but we'll get a little bit of clarification. That's how segment 3 is supposed to roll. It's supposed to wrap this up in a nice big bow for you. Hopefully it does that. But let's finish the segment with your super chats and some member comments before we do that. Let's go over here. All right. I think Polyrobotics is drunk. For $50, you can start to help me get drunk. Anyway, so Polyrobotics says Battle Theater of the Mind Maps. Who wins Battle Theater or Mind Maps? Theater maps or battle minds? Theater building or theater? I'm confused. I quit. I don't know. So who wins, guys? Who wins between Battle Theater or Mind Maps?
Yes.
I would say Battle Maps Mind Theater, actually.
Come on. Stop with the inception. All right. Thank you, Polyrobotics. Member for 18 months, and he's been a good super chatter for this channel as well. Really appreciate that.
Hope he hasn't been drunk that long.
He's always doing stuff like that. I think he just lives in a perpetual state of drunkenness just so he can hang out with us.
Just so he can tolerate this GMI.
Right? No, we're getting a lot of good responses for this GMI. So I think it's just tolerating us, me and Heathen Dog here at Legion of Myth. Like, oh God, hold on, before I go talk to those guys again. All right, anyway, Squirrel Hermit, 22 months, Polyrobotics, they're all losers. So he answered it for everybody. There we go. Everybody's a loser. One other person snuck on in without being a member or super chatter, but it was I thought it was a good point to kind of sum up some stuff. It depends on what people want out of the game. So-called in-character immersion is only one aspect of play. Some folks couldn't care less about immersion. Some think it's detrimental to RPG play. That blows my freaking mind, but I do know people who actually think that way. It's crazy to me. But because this is where I agree with Arch. I'm all about the immersion. I'm all about being in the headspace. I'm all, even though I think there's also a game to play as well, I'm all about like, no. Role playing is being the character, man. It's being in the world. And some people are like, man, just move Fred 5 squares forward, and I'm going to use my attack of opportunity, and you know what? It's like, okay, fine.
It's pushing paper buttons. That's a board game. That's all second quadrant. No fourth quadrant where you're thinking like the character. You're role playing. You are the character in your head. You've united your head with their head. That is the character transportation. That is, the narrative transportation is you are in the world. But then the fourth quadrant is I am also a different person in this world. Like it being like being immersed inside your character's head being detrimental to the hobby makes zero sense. That is like the ultimate goal of the hobby.
But some people are there to play a board game.
They're not at my table.
Yeah. Some people just want to kill monsters, loot treasure, and have fun with their friends. And
they want to be Munchkin.
Nothing wrong with that.
They want to be Munchkin.
That goes back to the whole beer and pretzel style of game that I don't want to be part of, but I know a bunch of people that absolutely do, and they love it. And we'll argue back and forth about, your game sucks. No, your game sucks. But
there's nothing wrong with it. Just like there's nothing wrong between with golf and football. Nothing wrong with them, but don't play football. And
no, golf and football. There's everything wrong with those. So.
Yeah, they're like it's not right or wrong. It's rather that right or wrong for what thing. If you are tackling me when we're supposed to be playing golf, you're playing golf wrong. So it's not about is it wrong to play football? Is it wrong to act like you're playing football when we've decided to play golf? The beer and pretzels mini stuff, that is not role playing. So you're playing it wrong if we're here to role play and you're not role playing.
I got a question on this. First of all, Dean, football or football? Which football?
Neither.
Because you're British, and I'm like, all of a sudden he's talking about tackling. I'm like, I'm not sure we're talking the same football here, but
I'm assuming it's American football you're talking about. We call it soccer.
I love me some American football. I don't know why.
Well, we actually call it football, but I'm not a sports person. Definitely not. I think snooker's about the most I am.
All right. The reason why, anyway. The reason why I put up that chat though was because the fact that I think it's important for folks to remember this is not about the panelists. It's about everybody who's watching afterwards. That there are many different styles of play, and of course, mine is the right style to play. End of story. Agreed. I'm not even going to say for me because that should already be assumed. All right. Mondohan for $19.99. Thank you very much. Says Arch looking dapper again tonight. Well, I'm sitting here looking like a wino. Another great panel tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mondohan. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll wear a different color next time. I do have more than one vest.
Okay.
I just like blue
uniform or something. I just
like blue. It is kind of my brand uniform, but I just
There you go. And another 5 Agile Monk. This is for the Arch Vest to +5 charisma.
Agile Monk, dude, I see you. Sorry, 1 second. Agile Monk, I see you in DC20's live stream. He calls you at every time. You're in other things too. Like you must be rolling in dough because you're like a patron to every other YouTuber out there.
Agile really Monk is good people. Yeah, he's been a really good supporter of this channel and some others. Absolutely. So we appreciate him.
+5 charisma is a lot. Do you really think I'm that charismatic? I wouldn't say so, but
it was +1 for each $1 he donated.
All right, cool. For the remainder of the stream, I'll have +5 charisma. Nice to connect with you. I mean, not really connect, but nice to see you, Agile Monk. I've looked forward to meeting you.
And then Poly Robotics, I guess I made him feel guilty. $50 says sober.
Goodness.
He's sober. Well, I'm not going to be because he allowed me some whiskey. Thank you very much, Poly Robotics. This is for you in the $50 super chat. I went back to the honey. I like this stuff. I like this stuff better than I should. American honey. It's only 71 proof, but you know what? Okay. I can't pull out the 100 proof stuff all the time, right? And I actually like this. There we go. Thank you, Poly Robotics. I really appreciate that. Hold on, I got to get all of this. This is good stuff. There we go. I'm gonna start sipping out of it.
That's how I prefer whiskey. Yeah.
So. Excellent. Well, thank you for all the super chats, folks, and the good questions and comments. I have been reading, most of you know this, I've been reading the comments and chat as we've been going on. But we are in limited time, so it is time to move into the third segment. All right, Jade, let's meet you. Who are you? Mr. We're gonna start calling you Mr. Backup. But nobody should take that as an insult. Jade has saved the day a couple of times. There've been a couple other people. I think Bear did once or twice, and there've been a couple people who saved the day. And so he was actually going to save the day because Arch wasn't feeling well. But then Doc had an emergency. By the way, Doc did contact me. He did have a minor emergency that kept him away from this. So Jade stepped up. So Jade, and for all the potential backups out there, you don't know how much I appreciate you guys. So thank you for doing that. Otherwise, I couldn't have a good panel. So with that out of the way, Jade. Who are you?
Oh, again.
Just me and Dean talking to each other.
Who are you? What content do you create?
Nothing wrong with that. But I like Jade's input here. I think he's great as part of this panel.
He's been absolutely fantastic for this panel because he's definitely been going down the. Sometimes I go, oh no, I'm not going to have somebody for the opposite end of the spectrum, so to speak. No, he's covering that with spades, and it's awesome. So, Jade, who are you? What content do you create, and what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Hello, my name's Jade, and I run Jade's Tabletop Tavern over on YouTube. And though I haven't put out anything in a little while, life has been a little hectic for me. I used to run a show called Gatekeepers. You can find all the episodes there, and I won't take them down until YouTube basically tells me I have to. And Gatekeepers was basically what GMI became. It was the original foundation work of what GMI is. Me and a panel of, unfortunately, very limited number of people would get on and talk about various concepts of gaming and various, topics. And I was the host. I would ask the questions. I was in Max's spot for, a number of years there. But I had to give it up because I had other life, responsibilities. But I've played, at least 15 different types of game. Granted, yes, my origin is D&D 3.5, but man, do I really love the World of Darkness. I also, played Pathfinder. I've played Savage Worlds. I've played Starfinder, Dragon Star. Again, those are 3.5 knockoffs. But I've played many different games over many different, sessions or campaigns. And I genuinely like role-playing games in general. So that's who I am.
All right. Well, you get this question. Looking back at your own campaigns, how much do the style, quality, and presentation of maps and visual aids actually, like for real, not just in your own noodle, affect mood, immersion, tension, and player engagement? And why has your preferred balance between functional clarity and atmospheric presentation produce better results at your table?
So it is my opinion that better aesthetics makes things clearer, quicker. If you have good aesthetics for a scene, you don't have to spend as much time describing the scene. Now, again, this gets back to the concept of I'm not Tolkien. I'm not going to be able to expound upon you how the water, is dripping down the stalactites. I can't do that. Like, I'm not that kind of a wordsmith. But I know how to find the images I want, cobble them together in a photo editor, a visual editor, to present to you the scene. Now, if it's something I think is important, I'm going to draw attention to it in one way or another. A light might shine on it in such a way as to make it prominent. So having better visuals reduces cognitive load for both the game master and the player, and it can lead towards deeper immersion. You set up a cave scene, or maybe even a dirt tunnel scene. The walls are kind of watery or slick looking. Players know, okay, if I touch that wall, I'm coming away with mud or slime or something wet and disgusting. I might set a scene in a warehouse. Okay, is it a modern warehouse? Is it a 1920s warehouse? Is it a dwarven warehouse? If I don't have the right visuals to set the scene, I'm going to potentially create 4, 5, however many players I have, different interpretations of what a warehouse looks like. So that's kind of my job is to set the scene appropriately to what is in the scene to interact with. So, you know, the more work I put into it, the faster the communication happens at the table.
Okay. What are you guys' thoughts?
Right, can I just get a clarification? Because we've seen, I take it, the ziggurat and that's some of the scenes you set up, which I think is fantastic. Do you primarily just run games on Roll20?
No. So Roll20 is one of the ones that allows me to keep my my images stored locally there. But I am looking to move towards Foundry, where I can create my own server and create hundreds of thousands of maps and scene locations. Roll20, I use the free version of Roll20. I'm cheap, you know, whatever. But I like free tools. You know, I'm going to use them because they're free.
Dean, does that sound like a conversation we were having earlier?
It does. It does.
But, you know, so yes, I'm using Roll20 right now. I do want to move to Foundry. I'm not going to pay for Roll20. That ship sailed a long time ago. But I've also used other VTTs like Index Card RPGs, VTT, IC, VTT. I've also used Owlbear Rodeo. And honestly, Owlbear Rodeo is quickly going to become my replacement to Roll20 while I transition to Foundry. There is a lot of potential in Owlbear Rodeo. You know, they still have limited storage on what you can put there, but they have add-on modules that you can have for like character sheets, for dice, for all sorts of things. You know, not to, you know, be an advertising spiel for, you know, these different VTTs, but a lot of them have different strengths. But yeah, so did you have a specific question in mind?
Yes, I did. So the imagery you use is, I think, primarily for VTTs, because VTTs are very visual in nature. And one of the problems I've always had, I've only used Roll20, but I'm assuming a lot of VTTs are going to be a similar process. Things are slower on a VTT because you've got the communication issues, you've got, if you put a map down, you've got the confusion of players trying to move and stuff like that. It's that cognitive kind of disconnect because everybody's disparate and away, and it's trying to get... So what you've done, one image that the players can quickly see and understand, and then you use the 3 zones from what I understand. So player movement is a lot simpler and it's a lot more streamlined. How would your method of play work around a table where everybody's collected, they're in the one place, and they're sat there with physical dice and stuff like that?
So I do use, like, well, actually, I've got them off to the side, but I have tiles, grid tiles for that aspect of it. I have a projector over the top of my table, so I can also project an image onto the table. I also can turn my screens around to present an image because I'm running dual monitors. So I can present an image to the table of like, this is the scene. I just leave them with that image while I'm looking at a different screen on my side of my notes and what's showing on the main screen. So I have different methods of conveying information visually based on what is required in the scene. And again, you know, if I'm grid-based tactical combat, I'm using my tiles, I'm using my 3D printed trees or rocks or whatever, or, you know, I'm just gonna go dig rocks out of my garden and put them on the table. A little bit of dirt won't help or won't hurt. But you know, it all depends on what kind of scene I'm setting as to what visual aid I need at my disposal.
Okay.
Real quick,
Arch had a question. I know.
Are you running like a PC and double monitors at your kitchen tables and like running for players in person?
Kitchen table?
Well,
no,
I mean,
goodness, I've got an entire basement here.
Oh, okay. So like you actually have a computer and double monitors in your gaming space and a projector.
Yes.
You are so high tech. I would like that. That was appealing to me a while ago, but not anymore. Just
so okay. That is one method that I can play. So I do have, you know, I do I used to have a table group. So I don't really have a table group anymore right now. The group I had, unfortunately, we had to move solely online because one of my players was moving to Kentucky. He was moving out of state. So to continue the group, we decided to host everything online to keep the player at the table, in the group. And that was the group's decision. Like, hey, this game wouldn't happen without this character. We really want this player and character at the table. I'm like, cool. I'll set up everything online and I'll just take all my notes and push them online. I'm okay with that. I'm kind of a go with the flow kind of game master. Now, for the table that or for the group that happens at the table in the basement, I'm mostly using tactical maps because that's the kind of players they are. They're very tactically minded. So they're going to be using battle maps. They're going to be using projected maps onto the table from modules or what have you. So I flow between the different states of aesthetic atmosphere.
Yeah, it sounds great. When I and I don't know whether this has moved forward because augmented reality really hasn't taken on. So that's where you look through a camera or you got the glasses and it fills in stuff. There's someone developed cards that you could put on a battle map, and through augmented reality, the creature would appear and animate. So you could actually have a battle map and just put these cards on to represent the creatures, but the players are seeing the monsters, they're seeing their characters, the whole thing's animating, it's moving. Because augmented reality really hasn't taken off, I think that project was shelved. But at the time, I was quite fascinated, and I was like, oh, I can't wait till this is the future. And I'm at a point in my life now where I'm there going, oh, the less technology at the table, the better.
Agreed.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
The idea of augmented reality and all that stuff, it's counter to my goal. My goal is use the imagination. It's be in the fiction. It's, the mind's eye. The more visual stuff you put in front of me, the less I'm in my own head. I want to be in my own head. I want to achieve a quasi dreamlike state where I am just in the zone, totally immersed. Like when you drive to work and you get there and you don't remember what happened, you weren't really present. That's what I want at the table, where it's like I am in this reverie state where I am just in the world and I'm not really present in the real world at the table. I'm in the game. That's what I want to achieve. So yeah, leave out projectors and screens and augmented reality. No, thank you.
So I have a question for you then, Ark. How do you affect mood or tension in a purely imaginative way? How do you set mood?
Mood and tension, it's a couple of things. One, I'll just start in order. One is the environment. Again, this really has to do with GM skill of description, is that I describe, it's my cadence, it's my tone of voice, it's, this underground cave, this dungeon, the walls are, they have this slime on the entrance, but the further you go in, it's dry, it's old, nothing has been here in a long time. It's decayed. It has this weight of emptiness within it. And then, like you described, it's completely dark and you can't see your hand in front of your face, and you light the torch and it casts these flickering shadows on the wall, and it almost looks like there's something at the end of the hallway, and then your torchlight reveals nothing, but you can't be sure. Like, that's mood. It's all description. It's all of like, if I can describe it well enough with my, I didn't like do it here because I'm not actually running right now, but the slowness of it. I think GMs don't take enough pauses to let the player, give the player time to imagine what you just described, and the texture on the walls and the sound of your foot crunching on the stones, and it echoes down the hall. And then GM, shut up, let them stew, let them be like, okay, we're in a very old place. Like, let them process that. That's how I do it. It's really just skill of description.
So I've been playing for 25 years, and English was a very hard subject for me in school. I didn't do well with it. I am a math and science nerd. So to me, having like mathematical or science fueled or logic fueled, information, that's how my mind processes things. So I'm not necessarily as skilled with descriptions, with very verbose descriptions. I'm not necessarily bad at it. I'm just not good at it. So in my aspect of how I use visuals to set the scene or set the mood, I'm looking at my color palettes. I'm looking at the lighting for the scene. I'm looking at, what emotion do I want portrayed in the visual? So the two things that I showed, the one was a very like sunny outdoors, the ziggurat and everything, very kind of happy looking people. But I put a cloud overlay onto it, and suddenly the light turns gray. The sky is filled with clouds and darkness, and I can flip that on and off with the flick of a button for my VTT. But I'm using actual color palettes to set my mood, to set my tone. So when things turn dark, my players know, oh, things just took a turn and not for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like how but I'm using technology to kind of control what my players are seeing, what my players can interact with. So that's how I set immersion intention.
Yeah, we each have the same objective. We're just using the tools. Like, we're good at one area and not so good in another, so we use the tool to supplement the area that we're not so good at. That's just called GMing. There's no one right way to do it. There's a right way to do it for you.
Right. Yes, I do use background music. Yeah, I also like background music.
Me too. Yes.
But I've never found that to have any influence on any game I've ever been in. I've tried it. I've been sat at tables where people have done it. I have never been inspired. Lighting worked better for me than any sort of music.
One caveat, though, you know how I'm always talking about diegesis, where your experience is the same as the character's experience. My music is actually diegetic. There are, like, if you're fighting some big boss, then an angelic choir will start to sing, and the characters are actually hearing what the players are hearing. By the way, just caveat. Continue.
So are there actually angels singing on the battlefield?
No, they're like up in heaven and whatnot. They're singing from Mount Celestia.
But I use more than just background music. Like, I might use background music that is scene specific. And they'll hear sounds like wagons moving in the background, or people talking, crowds talking at a distance. So I'm trying to bring them more into the scene by adding maybe some noise in the background. It's not necessarily just music; it's background sound effects. And when combat starts, suddenly they start hearing swords clash against shields. They start hearing cavalry charges, depending on the scene that they're in. I'm using, that whole graphic audio kind of soundscape to build the atmosphere around them, to inform their minds more than just visually, but also audibly, of what's going on around them. So if there's water dripping in a cave, you're going to hear that little plop of water echoing in the darkness.
Dean.
Yes.
You've been awfully quiet.
Oh no, I've been so we're venturing from visual to audio with this, so it's slightly off at a tangent, and I've just been looking at the chat. A lot of people saying, yeah, background music does causes issues with me. Again, music's going to be one of these things where it will vary from person to person.
Yeah.
A gaming group I had for years upon years upon years, they love the background music, but recently I've been forced, through using things like Roll20, running games remotely and stuff like that, to not have background music. And I got to be honest, when I went back to background music, I found it irritating when I was running the game, and I'd never had it irritating before, but it found it taking me out of my moment when running the game and distracting for me, because I'd begun to rely a lot more on descriptions, on setting the scene, and when I set the scene, I deliberately do less is more. So I will describe effectively what you see at a glance, and then stop. And then it's up to the players to go, oh, hang on, you mentioned what's this, what's that? And then I'll describe in further detail. And that got the players a lot more immersed. And I found it's a more natural way of the player exploring a scene or environment. I've never used, and I'm intrigued with how you approach things, Jade, with the image of the scene. And I actually it's one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, because I've seen a few other people do it, and I think sometimes it's hard to describe. A mountain is a mountain is a mountain, but you've got a specific mountain in view in mind, and it's hard to describe it. It's really difficult to describe it, and sometimes you just want to go, this is what you're seeing. You know, you're down here in the forest, you're looking up, the forest kind of clears, and then you got this mountain, these huge cliffs, more forests dotted around, until eventually it reaches to the sky, and you got snow-clad tops disappearing into the clouds. And to show them an image gives immediately, you're informing them a sense of scale and the majesty of the situation they're looking at, the scene they're looking at. So I have been tempted to kind of move down that route, but it's how you deliver that around a table. But yeah, I find descriptions, a very bare base map is what I use now rather than detailed maps. And yeah, music. I'm looking to go back to music because I do like it, but as I said, I don't know what it was. I just started struggling. I found it distracting when I was running the game.
I would say less music and more background scene settings, sound effects is what I would like
I haven't
to use
tried
more.
that yet. Yeah, I might dabble in that for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, just, you know, the occasional like person walking by, clopping through mud, you know, if the streets are wet. You know, the cart also, you know, moving by, maybe different languages people don't know. You know, they hear conversations, bits of conversations. And it's all meant to help bring the mind to the space that they're playing in.
Yeah. And I think that might work better. So the dripping of water when they're in a cave. And it means even though the table might go quiet, you've got that constant thing in the background reminding people you're in a cave, there's dripping water.
Yeah.
It would just make me want to go pee.
Yeah, I would.
And it doesn't work for some.
Yeah, that wouldn't work for me. That feels more like trying to make it a video game. And I would say, like, I want to make a video game. I want to make my tabletop game, and then years later, I want to make a video game. And because I want to do that, I'm not so tempted to put the really, you know, immersive stuff where stimulating all your senses. I'm not tempted to put that in my tabletop game or style of play or anything, because I know I'm saving it for a video game. I think if you're more tech inclined like you are, Jade, then it can be tempting to be like, oh yeah, I have these cool tools, I have audio, why not use it? But first of all, for me as an arbiter running the game, it's all this burden. Like when they walk out the cave and now I have to change the thing, it's too much burden for me. I don't really get to be immersed in the space with them. But also as a player, I think it would also be a little immersion breaking if it's like for every little thing, because then I know that the GM is clicking all the buttons and whatnot. And again, I'm stepping out of the theater of the mind and I'm stepping into the real world and using my real ears to hear real sounds. I don't want to. I would rather imagine it. I would actually rather imagine the horses clopping and the wheels turning in the mud and whatnot. I want to be in the imagined space in all my senses. I want to feel the flame in the world. I don't want the GM to give me like, here's a heater and he puts it on my arm so I feel the flame. It's like, no, I want to imagine.
Hey, that's diegesis, buddy.
As much as possible, Max.
That's possible. I have a heater
within the frame of sitting at that table and not being a dunce. So anyway, yeah, it wouldn't work for me. I do like very low effort stuff like, oh, you're in a tavern ambience. That's fine. But just not any more detailed than that. Like this person walking by, I'll just describe his footsteps.
Didn't you mention earlier, Arch, that if there's a boss fight, you have the choirs of heaven singing?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't want to point out the irony of the situation here. But,
it's low effort things where like tavern ambience, combat ambience.
Yeah,
like
but for me, that would be we're facing a boss and everything's been quiet. And now all of a sudden, the choirs of heaven have suddenly turned up to sing our.
Okay. So hold on. So that's all completely explained in game, but also there's a specific reason why we have that justification. It's because combat music actually does make sure that the table doesn't die and lose all energy when someone's sitting there searching for something. Having a little something on in the background really does help with that. So it spawned from, hey, I want something on in the background. I want music on in the background so that the silent moments aren't completely silent. How do I justify this? So it's really practically applicable first, and then I justify it.
Okay. I love combat music for starters because it does keep the flow of the combat going. It keeps that pulsing. And Dark Souls soundtracks, the Elden Ring soundtracks are my kind of bread and butter there.
I've got to play those.
Yeah, they're good to set the pace, set the scene.
I mostly use it for, again, scene setting and for something that is poignant, something that needs more emphasis and attention than words might be able to describe for me. So when an enemy that the players are not meant to fight in the moment comes onto the scene, you're damn sure I'm going to be playing the Ring Wraith song. You know that that's going to come because this guy is, or Sauron's, main theme, because it's going to draw the emphasis. Is like, oh, that's a big bad. Do we really want to go up against it right now, or do we want to back off, take time to prepare, and come at it again? It's kind of informing the player, not necessarily the character, but informing the player. Something has changed. Something has happened. Be aware.
It's communicating information. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to do a quick follow-up. We've got to get to segment 4 here. And like the last probably 4 or 5 streams, we're going to have time for one person. But I want to ask this question because we've talked about what you guys do, and we're going to start with Jade on this. But I want to talk about, we'll say, mistakes were made. Have you ever had a visual aid hurt the scene by pulling the tension away from the tension, the mystery, or the player focus?
Ooh, man. I want to say yes, I have. And that's because I made a mistake in what I put in the scene as Game Master's eyes only. There are things or elements I put onto my map that I don't necessarily show the players. And I got them mixed up one time. I got, the different layers mixed up of what the players see versus what I see. And they were able to see every secret room, and I didn't know that it had flipped around on me. So they were able to see everything because I didn't have Fog of War at the time. There was
and
no
were they
Fog of
smart
War
players and didn't tell you?
Yes. they somehow lucked into every secret compartment. I'm like, how do they know? And then I checked the VTT and I'm like, oh, roll 20. I hate you so much right now because it had flipped on me.
Well, I'm not a VTT fan, but I hope you enjoy Foundry. It's the only one I actually kind of like.
I want to learn it. I know it's going to be a lot of JavaScript that I have to learn.
I've heard only good things about Owlbear and Foundry, but I am blessed to have in-person games. I ran my first online game Tuesday, and it went okay, but I certainly prefer in-person.
Oh, I agree 100% with you on that one. So Dean, Arch, same question for you guys. So have you ever had, a beautiful visual aid hurt the scene by pulling attention away from tension or mystery or player focus, whatever? And the main purpose of this question is to let people know out there that number one, doesn't always work. It's okay. It happens to the best of us.
I think the only time I've had a visual aid really hurt the scene is where I've either forgotten to put something important in it, it's been rushed, like a note or something, and then I'm getting frustrated. Why haven't they picked up on this? Why haven't they picked up the clue? And then when I check the note after the session, I go, oh God, I missed that and I forgot to put it in. I think that's happened once or twice, but otherwise. There are some times when I have a battle scene planned and I think this is perfect, and the battle scene starts, the monsters are ambushing the party, and then for whatever reasons I just got my scales wrong and the monsters are so far away that their ambush round is completely useless. The party are in a much stronger position and the whole thing just falls flat. And that's happened a few times. So yeah, mistakes do get made and you just got to roll with them.
Yeah, I don't have any specific memories in mind because it's been a while since I've really heavily relied on physical aids and battle maps and all that kind of stuff. But I know it's happened, and it's pretty much happened every time that I've been too quick to draw out a battle map and give them some kind of visual thing, when really it could have been served better. Their immersion and their focus on the game and the fiction could have been served better by me simply describing it, and I was too quick to jump to here's a visual aid when they really didn't need it.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let us get prepared for segment 4 then. So it's been a good panel tonight. I'm going to have some more things to say in the members only side. Probably, yeah, well, actually, you don't need to know about that. I don't know how long the members only is going to be. I've got a lot of stuff to do tomorrow, but we'll figure that out here. I owe you an hour, although you got an hour and a half last week. We'll see. Get my copy of that so we can get the link out for folks. All right. So become a legitimate channel member by hitting that join button. You can also support us after the live stream with a super thanks. It really helps us know that you truly like the content and want more of it. Do you think, maybe possibly, in some universe, preferably this one, that you might have more panel presence than these fine folks down here? More experience? Or something else to improve upon the panel like this? Well, sign up on the GMI Discord. The link is in the description. Read the rules and find a panel topic that interests you. Got Mystery May coming up in May. That's why it's called Mystery May. There you go. In segment 4, we bring you in to talk to our panelists about tonight's topic. I'll post a link for you to join in just a moment. Just remember, I'll try to get to everyone I can, but I will prioritize members and super chatters. Let me put the link out there. That's for you, and that's for you. Now, while we wait for some folks to come in, let me read some super chats here. Oh, wait, we have none, because that came in last time. But I'll thank Poly Robotics again for the $50. Cup's empty. Just for the folks out there, just so you know, the cup's empty. Poly Robotics knew how to fill it up. Do you?
and remember, if you don't sign up for the May Mystery Month, we may not have any panel.
That's how it works. That's I don't
nothing but backups.
What's that?
Or a panel of nothing but backups.
I would have to have 3 backups, and at that point, I think we've got a full panel. Yeah, you know. But no, that is how it works, and the reason is I've had people in the past say, "Well, you should just reach out and do this." Like, I am not hurting cats. Either people want to be on the panel, or they don't, and I get it. If this isn't a panel for you, then don't sign up. I'm not going to cry. Just means, you know, I bet you my wife won't cry either, because I'll be spending more time with her. On the flip side, I won't be making money and I'll cry. So, you know, oh, there we go. She'll have to comfort me. Anyway. All right. So it's time for segment 4, where you can have your say. Also come over to the Discord server, have your say there as well. Love it if we could conjure up some great conversations in those channels. Before we bring anyone in to talk, got to remind you of a few things. If you don't want to get booted and possibly banned, I do have mods watching today. Do not break YouTube's terms of service. Also, stay on topic. Unless someone specifically super chats more time for you, you have 5 minutes maximum for your back and forth. So make your point quickly. And no matter what, the show has a hard stop at 2 hours and 30 minutes. This means we may not get to everyone. I don't know. The last couple of weeks, we might be sitting here talking to ourselves for a little while longer. Finally, I make no guarantees, but I'll try to prioritize members, super chatters, and Rumble ranters. And with that, we'll get to our first person as soon as somebody wants to pop on in here and talk to you guys. The other rule that I have, I don't really have the rule written down anymore, but I just want to make sure this is for them, not for me. So please don't pop on in here. Tell me how much you love the show, hate the show, whatever you want about the show. This is time that they're giving. So please ask them a pertinent question about tonight's topic. And all right, I've got to switch to that and switch to that. There we go. Now we're prepared for some folks. Come on in here. Talk to us. Do it now. In the meantime, there was one more follow-up question I kind of wanted to ask because I was a little curious about it. Let me see. Let's go back up here. You guys were talking about background music, and, you know, Jade showed an image. What visual qualities most strongly affect mood for you guys? Is it detail? Is it texture? Is it colors? Is it scale? Is it age, cleanliness? I mean, what is it? Is it something tactile? Is it a picture? What really works for you in terms of visual? Now, it doesn't have to just be battle maps. This can be whatever, like the tokens that Jade was, you know, showing before. Whatever. What works best for you? And it's technically a segment 3 one, so we'll let Jade start.
Oh, man, put me on the spot. Can you repeat the question?
Basically,
Lighting.
what works best for you in terms of visual? What visual qualities work best for you?
Qualities? I don't know. So it depends on the table. Like if I'm physically at a table, like I want tokens. I want something that players can actually pick up, hold, feel the weight of if I've weighted it a specific way. Because I think that's going to draw them in and draw their attention to, hey, why is this piece of plastic so dang heavy? I don't know. Is there something about it that could be used somewhere? Is it a counterweight for something? So at the physical table, I want physical objects for the players to interact with. But because I've gone mostly digital these days, I'm looking for quality of background music or sounds. And I don't want the sounds necessarily playing all the time. I'm going to cue the sounds when I think they're important or when I think they're pertinent. As far as visual quality goes, I don't need anything perfect. Players don't need perfect art or perfect accuracy in placement. They need to know what matters and where they are and what their choices might mean in the particular scene. So when your visuals can deliver that, they stop being just decorations and they start being part of your game's language. And I think that's the key there is your visuals need to be a kind of part of the game language that your players don't necessarily have to ask questions. Like they see what they see. They're able to interact with what they see.
Okay. Dean, Arch, what do you guys think? What
Lighting.
works best for you?
Lighting.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, like if we're talking about visual scenes and images and pictures and whatnot, if it's bright and happy and sunny, that sets a tone. If it's dark and rainy, that sets a different tone. Everything else is secondary, tertiary, all the rest after that. I think for me, the really important thing is what I talked about previously about having something physical there, like the paper, the parchment, the letter, the handwritten letter and whatnot, give it to them. But besides that, if we're talking about like visuals exclusively, lighting is going to be the big thing that sets the tone.
Okay.
It's a difficult one because it will vary. The one thing I've had consistently setting the tone is maps, and it will just be a map of the dungeon they're in, which they're mapping. So it's setting the tone for them because they're physically mapping it. They're visualizing the dungeon. I'm describing what they're coming across. Especially when it's a very confusing dungeon. I'm very good at creating my labyrinths with switchbacks, teleporting passageways.
Oh God, you're not a
like
Grimtooth guy, are you?
No.
Okay.
I when it comes to the traps, no, actually, to be fair, I've created some very fiendish traps. But when it comes to labyrinths and stuff like that, I can create some really interesting puzzles for parties to lose themselves in. So I would say maps, mostly hand-drawn, actually, because it gives the players the outline, and then my descriptions give them what they want. Their questioning of those descriptions fills in further detail, and we go from there. That's been the most consistent. If I had all the time in the world, yeah, it would be nice to have proper visuals, 3D terrain and all the rest of it, but I don't have the money, don't have the time. And again, I think it's a little bit distracting to players. But for certain games, I think that would set the scene if you got players who are into that, and you're setting a very big scene. But no, to answer your question, the most reliable visual aid I've ever had is hand-drawn maps.
Okay. For me, believe it or not, Jade did it. I like pictures. So if it's, especially if it's somewhat realistic looking, not like some sort of anime picture or whatever, but something that gives me a feel of the world. You show me a picture, this is the meadow. And I used to do this when I was in the Air Force back in the 90s. Of course, pictures then took like, 4 hours to download and to print out. But I would print out a 10 to 20 pictures for the next session. And if they went to the locations that I was expecting, who's the Amber Alert? Got an Amber Alert. But I would print them out and say, this is the field that you see. This is the, this is, I don't do dungeons that much, but this is the carnage that you found, whatever. I would show things like that, because then they're all on the same page without me having to over describe, and then I could just describe the rest of it. But good news, perfect timing. We have somebody who's popping in. So out of Austin, you got 5 minutes, sir.
Hey,
what you got?
Up? Sorry about my crazy hair. I was just walking home. It was windy.
Walking on his head.
I was playing in Arch's game on Tuesday, and one thing that visually really helped in that game was a drawn out like region map. And I did get to the stream a little bit later today, so I'm not sure if you already discussed that. But what were some of the favorite like regional maps that y'all have either used or been in the game with?
I hardly ever actually get to play, but the first time I did play, my GM gave me a map and whatnot, and it was it made everything real. Like, he gave me a color drawn out map and whatnot, and it wasn't completely diegetic and immersive and whatnot, because I couldn't technically, like, my character technically hadn't seen everything, but to see, oh, this is pre-existent, this is real, this thing exists here first, and then I get to explore it. Like, I don't, like, that's green over there, I can assume it's a forest, which is what my character might know, but I don't know what all the dots are. I don't know exactly what this is. So it wasn't like it was a cheat sheet and I knew all the stuff I shouldn't have known, but just knowing, oh, there's like a hill and a valley, and I can see a city down there, and I can see a forest over there, and a river over here, and some deadlands beyond. Like, that is what my character could see. And it just made everything feel real. It was pre-existent. It wasn't this, oh, it's whatever I want in my head. It's like, no, this is a real place, and you can actually do real things in this world, and there's no hand-holding. There was no adventure to go on. It was... the entire tone, everything that game was, started with the map. The fact that it was one certain pre-existent map, and I loved it. And then every game that I run after, I build a region map to give to my players, maybe as a subconscious repetition of that thing, trying to give them the same experience that I had, that this is a real pre-existent place. I'm not making it up as I go. Your actions actually have real effects on this place, and it's 100% stable and consistent, the way the same way that real life is.
Yep. Yeah. For me, when I did a lot of Forgotten Realms, and it's the 3rd edition Forgotten Realms map is the one I always go back to. It's a beautifully drawn map for focusing on regions and stuff like that. You got areas in the 3rd edition Forgotten Realms book where it does a big zoom, and similar to what Archer said there, it gives players a very informed a lot of information. They can inform decisions on where they want to go, how they want to travel, stuff like that, because the map has where the hills are, where rivers are, and all the rest of it. As I said, maps for me are the best visual aid, and I use Incarnate a lot now to build my maps for Kaseya, which is the world that my game's set in. Although you can run your own bespoke worlds within the system, there's no problems. But Kaseya comes alive when you look at the map, because it's that detail. And as I start running with Incarnate, I can get that good zoom level straight the way in and start adding the points of interest. And indeed, some of the best games we have had are where the players have got a map with points of interest, and it's where do you want to go, and they then explore. And it's not quite, your hex crawl, but it's a nice directed way of playing. I know what I can prepare, and the players know kind of where to go to find something interesting, and it's up to them as to how they do it. And then they find rumors on the other locations and stuff like that, so they can be better prepared. They go into something which is just way too difficult for them, because their scouts go in first, and they're like, no, guys, we can't do this now. Retreat. We need a bunch of trolls there. We need to get a lot of fiery stuff. And that creates some great games, but it all hinges around that map. So yeah, a good regional map. I think you can't do any better than that.
Dean, I really want to see your Incarnate maps. I did not know you use Incarnate. I use Incarnate all the time. We got to share. I want to see your stuff.
Yeah, I think have we got it on our website? I'm working on the main map now, and I will definitely get a copy over to you.
We'll connect afterward. Cool.
Yeah.
Add up any final comments? You got about a minute left. If there's anything else you want to say to them?
No, that's just what popped into my head. So I want to see what the panel thought.
I do have a question, Austin. Did you say that it actually was enjoyable or good, or it enhanced the experience for me to give you that regional map?
It definitely made it easier when you were describing like how far things were in the directions. Because even though I know intuitively what east and west mean, sometimes I get it mixed up.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm glad it helped.
All right, then. Out of Boston, we're going to bump here, but thank you very much for popping in. Really do appreciate that. We do have time for one more person if somebody else wants to pop in. Thanks again, sir. So if anybody else wants to jump in here, otherwise we're going to probably end this soon. Jade had to go fly away. Apparently he's trying to role play Wizard of Oz right now.
Yeah, that's what I assumed happened.
Yeah.
So I used to live in Illinois, and that's Tornado Alley, and like, nope. Like, glad I don't live there anymore. And so Illinois had 3 things when it came to storms that I wasn't used to. Number 1, lightning is, you may as well just think you're outside during the daytime. It's just bluer. Like, it's crazy lightning there. Hail every storm. I don't think there's ever been a storm in Illinois that didn't include hail. And then tornadoes, like hey, tornado warning. People like, okay, shouldn't you go under a house or something? Tornado warnings. You've had like 4 of them in the city in the last 2 weeks. None of them came close to my house. I'll be fine. It's like, okay.
I mean, that's not untrue.
It was weird, man. Like all the hail damage out there. Anyway, well, what I am going to do, since it does take us a moment to switch on over to the members only, I think we should jump over to the members only now. I'm not going to sit here and waste everybody's time. Like, come on, more people. We don't even have time for one anymore. So with that said, I want to say that is it for the public portion of tonight's Game Master Insight. Please leave a comment of who you believe had the most compelling, interesting, or novel position. See, novel could be like, you learned something. Like, oh, I didn't consider that. So you might not even agree, but be like, that's still good food for thought. Did you learn anything new that you may try at your table? Let us know in the comments. YouTube members, there is more to come, so don't go anywhere. I'm going to try this little button over here and see if it works. If not, well, it doesn't. Anyway, I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Where we sincere thank you to everyone who supported the show with super chats and rumble rants and allowed me to drink some whiskey. I really like that whiskey. Finally, thank you very much to tonight's panelists for their time and for their informative and spirited. You guys haven't been arguing a lot, but I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on that. How do I make them fisticuff each other?
Did you bring anyone?
I might be a devil's advocate at times, but I don't like to argue.
No, actually, no, that's good. It's good. The discussions have been better because of it, instead of just, Imagine if I was on a panel.
If you bring anyone from 4D, the co-creation side, into a panel with me, there will be sparks and there will be fists.
I don't know about all of them, because Mr. Max does what Crispy does amazing. I love what Crispy's on.
Chris.
I mean, again, agree or disagree, as a panelist.
Oh no, I'm sure he's great. Oh yeah, I'm just saying that there would still be sparks. Like the older you go, like in age, like the younger 4D'ers, we get along. The older 4D'ers, sparks.
Fair enough. All right, well, check out their content. All the links are in the descriptions. And with that, I look forward to doing this. Next week. I don't know why that's not in here anymore. I should be talking about next week. Next week is supposed to be members only. It's not going to happen. I have to postpone it. So next week, there is no show. That's just, again, normally it'd be members only. I have to postpone that one. And I might talk about that on Sunday. I don't know. But I don't have time to do that now. And then Sunday, we have Kevin Sambita, Sean Owen Robertson on to talk one final time, part 3 of the, oh my God, how Kevin changed the entire hobby of gaming. I sound like I'm making fun of it, but that's because Sean basically forced us to do that. Kevin kind of feels, I don't want to say embarrassed, but he's like, thanks guys for promoting me, because he's got, he's humble sometimes. But we're also going to talk about the weekend with Kevin Sambita, which happens, that's this upcoming one. It's not this weekend, next weekend, I think. Yeah, that's one Heathen Dog is going to be around for. So, so we're going to find out what kind of shenanigans Heathen Dog is going to have when he's there, visiting Kevin and all the people, like some artists and writers and so forth from Palladium Books. So that's what we're going to talk about on Sunday. Now, finally, with that, I'm going to play the outro, and I will see everybody else on the members only side.
Bye, and thank you all for watching.